We're live on YouTube, and we are live, gang. Hello, 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 and welcome to yet another episode of WhickTV, a cross-ideological space where we bring together the best and the worst among us to discuss topics political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Oh, we have a show for you today, gang. We have a show for you today. It's going to be amazing, and I'm glad that you're all here. We're going to be talking about stochastic violence. We're going to talk about rhetoric. We're going to talk about politics. Some old school political discussions going to take place live on my stream. I'm just excited to get away from the drama shit. Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm excited to get away from the drama shit. So we're gonna get that today. We're gonna be talking about whether or not the left is responsible for violence, or is at risk of being responsible for violence due to inappropriate rhetoric. Sondsol has brought us this topic, and so I am going to let him have first say. Go ahead, Sondsol. What do you think? Open us up, brother.
Yeah, so the topic can kind of go a lot of different directions because of how many parts of it that there are, but I would make the argument, and I have made the argument on Twitter and on stream, that there is a stochastic terrorist in our midst, and I believe that it is Vosh. I think that the guy, while he recognizes the danger, as most people on the left do, of the enormous amounts of anti-trans legislation in the United States right now, he misattributes that not to just systemic oppression, but to an actual ongoing and currently happening genocide. Not one that's upcoming, like he said in his Rose Wrist debate, but like he said in his first debate with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙, where he first started talking about it, and in his recent video on the Nashville shooter. It is an ongoing genocide that trans people need to arm themselves to take defensive measures, whether they're preemptive or otherwise, to ensure that they are not continued to be genocided. There's a couple of aspects to this. Part of the discussion is around gun legislation and school shootings and mass shooting events. Obviously, I really don't like those things. I don't think most people do. I don't know how in-depth people want to go in on that. Part of this conversation is going to be about the trans genocide, and part of this is going to be about Vaush's rhetoric that could lead someone to go out and do violence, or could at least be part of a broader media environment where, if enough people in that media environment are putting it out, would define him by his own definition as a stochastic terrorist.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing this to us, and I'm sure we all will have opinions. And I'm curious, after this discussion, chat, both on YouTube and Twitch, if you can let me know what you think. I'd be curious to see if the needle's moved at all. So in response, we're going to give everyone a brief opening, then we're just going to get into it. And I'll be guiding the discussion with questions and thoughts that I may have. And other than that, let's just go right ahead. Falsers, what do you think?
This one's a little tricky for me because I don't necessarily disagree with any of the particulars of what Sondsol has said. There's a couple like smaller nuance points that I'm not 100% on board with, but I think the larger conversation is an effort to divert from a bigger problem. I think the reality is, when we have conversations about stochastic terrorism, about trans people, we're neglecting to talk about a bigger problem on the other side. The reality is trans people only account for 1.3% of our mass shootings in about the past 20 years. It's 4 out of 306. It's a very, very, very small slice. And so if we're going to start to do demographic analysis of where these problems are and the prescriptions for fixing them, I think starting with Vosh and the trans community is a radically misguided way to approach the discussion.
Okay. Katie, what do you think?
I thought this was going to go a certain way, but I'm going to put my whole weight on Falser's point, make no point of my own, and just say I'm like doubling down on what Falser said.
We'll see how that works out for you. Staxiums, please.
Yeah, I wrote up a thing. I don't know if that was appropriate, but I'm just gonna read it real quick. So violence is justified for disenfranchised groups if it works to better their political positions and ultimately save lives. This should be a no-brainer for anyone. There is a caveat there, though, that I do not want to gloss over. If it works. Audrey Hale, the trans shooter, set back trans discourse, and we can see this with a huge amount of conservative rage lately. This is only mitigated by the fact that they don't have their stats on their side. Anyone looking into the situation will see an obvious through line. Trans people are less violent than nearly any other community. If there is another trans shooter, which there probably will be simply because America has a shit ton of shooters, I worry about a possible day that the stats are not in our favor, and any rhetoric that currently condones violence has the possibility of allowing this day to come to fruition. We unfortunately live in a democracy, and the left has to accept the fact that the issue is not some boogeyman corporation, but our neighbors who don't understand us. Communication is the only path that leads forward, and we are not in any meaningful place to suggest that violence is an answer. I've also seen a lot of rhetoric about genocide, and I do think that we should probably tone that down quite a bit. I think genocide is kind of an extreme word that is not justified.
Okay, well, we'll see how it goes. First time guest on my channel, Staxiums. We'll see how you do. Next up, 𝕵𝖎𝖎, please.
Hi, yeah, I wrote something out as well, probably a little bit too long, but I'll read it out anyway. I'll try and be quick. So after looking at the comments that Vosh has made regarding like previous acts of terror and how they could have been motivated by online reactionary figures, I would agree that by his own definition, he could be a stochastic terrorist. That being said, if I were Vosh, I would probably respond by saying that he never actually called broad inflammatory rhetoric inherently bad. Rather, it was bad because of the goals of that rhetoric, meaning that it caused violence against minorities. Vosh's rhetoric, at least ostensibly, calls for defensive acts and a call to arms in case of violence perpetrated against vulnerable minorities. At what point, if at any, do calls for violence or the acts of violence themselves become justified when your rights are being wrongly infringed? Are we reaching that point in the United States regarding trans rights? If those acts are never justified, what recourse do targeted groups have? On the other hand, if you think violence in a broader political self-defense sense is justified, to what extent are the advocates of this self-defense culpable for like the lone wolf terror attacks like we saw with this Tennessee shooting? I'm not claiming to have the answers, but I think these are interesting ethical dilemmas for us to consider and that I hope to on this panel.
We will try to have the discussion. It's up to you all how serious it is. Ginger, the best for last. Please, what are your thoughts?
I believe along the same lines as some of the people on the panel that genocide is an extremely strong word to use. Also, but I do believe that Vosh's rhetoric can lead to people going ham on a situation that they necessarily wouldn't get that angry about. Maybe angry, yes, but not to the point where they'd go out and, start something drastic. Do I believe that he's leading people to school shootings? No. I believe that starts at home, and maybe the middleman becomes something online that you hear or see or on TV or the news or something like that. But I believe that all school shootings start at home.
Sure. Ginger, are you using your right mic? Are you using your webcam mic, or are you using your mic you have now? Because it's sounding a little tinny and there's some echo. I'm not sure.
Let me try to fix that. Hold on.
Sure. But in the meantime, Vosh actually reached out to me and gave me a statement. So I'm going to read that now. Hopefully that's okay. It's something he said publicly, so I don't think it's inappropriate, right? I did invite him on this panel, full disclosure, but he was like, nah, I don't want to. And this is fine. He says this. The belief that there's a rising threat of violence against trans people is basically a mainstream liberal position at this point. And the belief that threatened people should arm themselves preventative is fundamentally American. I haven't said anything radical. He, Sondsol, just likes whining. Okay, and with that, let's get into the discussion. Go ahead, gang.
Wait, what was the last bit about me? Sondsol is what?
Just like whining.
Is whining. Okay.
I'll allow it,
so,
by the way.
So Vosh has absolutely called for explicit violence when it comes, like in the Luke Beasley debate. He talks about like taking pot shots at conservatives rolling down and open carrying in the back of their trucks. So I mean, I don't know. That's about as close to a call to violence as you could possibly get without like literally saying, okay, we're going to go to this place at this time, on this date, and we're going to open carry, and we're going to, gun down as many people that oppose us as possible. Like, but in regards to other things that people said, I want to make it clear that my argument isn't staked on trans people being like the overwhelming, like, or being even a big part of the mass shooting issue, right? I don't think that right now, as it is, trans people are this like existential threat in the way that like maybe like far right nationalists who got mega radicalized in 2015 through 2019, going out and like shooting up synagogues and mosques and stuff, right? I wouldn't say that they're on that tier. I'm specifically focusing on the rhetoric that Vaush used. I had here, Vosh never called for explicit violence. He absolutely did. And I just like gave the example. And in addition to that, neither did Lauren Southern, neither did PewDiePie, neither did Ben Shapiro. But in one of the videos that I linked in our group chat about this topic, the Christchurch video, he names all of them as being stochastic terrorists. He lists them all as being responsible for the media environment that the Christchurch shooter was taking in, that led him to go out and shoot people up.
Just for clarification, just so we can have some facts in this debate, the manifesto released by the recent shooter in, I believe, Tennessee, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Does mention Vosh, but mentions Vosh as a terrorist.
Yeah. No, that was the Colorado one.
Yes.
The Colorado. I'm sorry.
There are two manifestos. Yeah, you're fine. There's two manifestos. There's one in Colorado where the person was caught before they did any kind of shooting. I didn't even think that this was a true story at first, because the first article that was out there was written so shoddily. I thought it was like a Breitbart article written by like an angry 15-year-old. But it turns out that it is true. I don't know what the real context of them calling Vosh a terrorist in there was, but whatever. But yeah.
I just want to get this out of the way. Sorry, just real quick. I just want to get this out of the way. Is anyone accusing Vosh of encouraging these shooters at all? Because I wouldn't take that position at all. I think that's a pretty extreme position.
When
that's
you
indefensible.
Say encouraging them, do you mean like that is?
Do you think he's
intention?
at all for this specific shooting?
I don't think there's a way for us to know until the manifesto is like fully released. Yeah.
No, for sure. So I just don't want to. I just want to. Maybe talking about 𝕬𝖎𝖙 doesn't bring the most amount of productive conversations, because it seems like no one's blaming her actions on Vosh.
Well, let's go with Katie and then Uzmark. Go ahead, Katie.
Just to try to go off of what Stax was saying, Sondsol, are you basically trying to say not necessarily that we can blame Vosh for any shootings, but that his rhetoric stokes fear that might influence those?
The inciting incident on Twitter was me saying, if I was Vosh, I would be tiptoeing around this one until I knew that my name was completely in the clear, until I knew what the actual motive for the shooting was. Because holy shit, if they talk about, the trans legislation, if they talk about the like trans genocide especially, like, oh man, that's going to be a really, really fucking bad look for you, right? That was the inciting tweet. Was I would be tiptoeing around the topic.
Yeah, and I remember in our conversation I told you that even if that was mentioned, I don't think there's any issue with Vosh regarding that.
So can I ask you, Katie?
He would be like, even if Vosh was saying we need to be taking pot shots at people who are threatening us, whether it's explicit or implicit, we should be taking pot shots at them out of our windows. We should be preparing like we're already under a genocide.
The reason why you only bring up that quote is because it's a specific quote who was said in a specific context when he was talking about a civil war already happening, when people are like genociding trans people. You don't have other quotes because
that's
you're
not
blowing
the
that
context of that quote.
Proportion.
That's not
fine.
the context of the quote at all. He doesn't say, you know, in a couple of years when there's already people being shipped off in the camps, I want us to start like shooting conservatives. No, he said that in the same way that those this is paraphrased, but it's pretty close. In the same way that the Patriot Prayer guys who were rolling around BLM protests in their $60,000 trucks, open
Yes.
carrying, right? I want people to take pot shots at them out of their windows, right? He's not talking about a civil war or an oncoming like grand conflict. He's just talking about it.
He's talking about if white supremacy group militias are in your street that obviously have hostile intents towards you, you should arm yourself so you can defend yourself. That was what he was saying.
I
Okay.
think even if we were to take that at face value, that seems like an extreme hypothetical that we probably shouldn't be engaging in because it only stokes fear. I don't think that's even close to a reality that we currently are living in. Now we can
that's the
say
reality
that's
that he
just
says
not
that
the
we're
framing
already
that Sondsol
in.
gives
Yeah.
it.
No,
Yeah,
that's
and-
exactly the context that he
I
says
wanna-
that we're in
No,
right
for
now.
him-
I want
for
to.
him to say that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Ginger, finish your thing, but I have a question for Katie. Go ahead, Ginger.
Oh no, just for him to say that we're somehow like in the midst of a trans genocide and they're like close to being shipped off to camps and stuff is absolutely ridiculous. Like, sure, there are plenty of people that are against trans movements, but to say that we're close to encampments is absolutely nonsense.
So, Katie, in your opinion, this kind of rhetoric that Vosh has engaged in, just to be clear, does not has had no influence on the violence that we've seen. That's your position?
What violence that we've seen? One mass shooter who happened to be trans?
Fair
That
enough.
violence that we've seen?
Okay. So,
Okay, good.
would you say that libs of TikTok is their rhetoric is responsible for the violence that we've seen on the other side?
Is it responsible? No, it's one contributing factor of a bigger media machine.
Okay, but it is a
I-
contributing factor.
Oh, holy
correct?
shit! That's like
Be
my
clear,
entire
be clear.
argument about Vosh.
We
I
need to be
mean-
clear though. Libs of TikTok is way more fucking aggressive than Vosh. Libs of TikTok
And
is
also
Vosh
bigger.
people.
But then you
Like-
have to say that they're all involved. Like, you'd have to go back down to like Keffels and shit like that, where like
Do you mind
even-
if I clarify?
Yes, I would
this?
say that anyone in like the Vosh orbit that pushes this same trans genocide rhetoric in the way that they do is absolutely doing the exact same thing as Vosh. I would say
Do
that
you-
I know that Demon Mama has put out this rhetoric. I know that some of like the very small orbiters around Demon Mama have said it. I think Keffels has said it.
Keffels has done
and
it a few times.
yeah.
Though she
and I
might have
think-
backtracked on that
Hello?
after. I don't-
Yeah, and I'm just gonna finish this. I think Xanderhall, but for the life of me, I cannot stand watching his videos. So I couldn't suffer through a full one of his videos to make sure. So I won't
So I have
put
a
his name in there.
question and then a comment.
Well,
Um,
let's
yeah.
let Katie clarify. Then you can have the
Sure.
question. Then Uzbark's been in line for a bit.
Yeah,
So.
this is very clear. You can talk about Vosh and his orbit and how their rhetoric, like what Stack said, I think that was a pretty good framing that you can argue about. However, there isn't trans violence like that is an issue. However, a lot of violence by the conservative media machine has absolutely happened against trans people and other marginalized communities. So we're outraging about a violence that doesn't exist from a group that even if Vosh and Keffels and all the orbiters are accountable for, which sure, I'm open to that idea, does not have the same mainstream reach, the same financial backing, and the same amount of audience. This is absurd. It's not
Number one,
equivocal in any way.
Okay, I never like once tried to say that I've already explicitly said the exact opposite. That I don't think that right now, as it stands, that trans violence is as a response to this, as far as we know with this one shooter, we don't know, but like even broadly speaking, that trans people are going out and shooting people up. What I'm specifically
Then what are you
critiquing
upset about?
well, if you would let me speak, then I'll tell you. What I'm
course.
specifically upset about is the rhetoric that Vosh uses is the exact same plug and play rhetoric that people who were pushing the white genocide rhetoric in 2015 through 2019, Lauren Southern, fucking Stephen
So-
Molyneux, those
so-
people talked about like they're already taking away your rights to go out and peacefully protest for this because you'll get canceled and you'll get your life
So,
ruined.
are
Let me
you-
finish. All right.
Come on.
They're taking away your ability to protest. They're taking away your voting rights by, browning America and browning the West. So they're having a larger share of the votes. They're taking away all of the institutions. The only option at the end of the day that they leave you is violence. And that's the same thing with Vaush.
That's great. So, in terms of what bothers you with the rhetoric is that you think some rhetoric shouldn't be used on either side, not the consequences of what rhetoric can lead to, because I think that's bullshit.
No, I think we're worried about consequences. I don't think anyone here. I think.
Hi, hello.
Wait, why are you going to cut me off, but I don't get to cut you off?
Because I'm responding to
Standards. It's misandry.
I'm
Okay.
I'm so disenfranchised here.
Okay, no, I get to, first of all, I get to decide who gets to cut each other off, and poor Falsers has been very good, and poor 𝕬𝖎𝖎 has been very good, and so I'm going to reward them both, right, for being very good by letting
anything to
Falsers
say.
and then 𝕬𝖎𝖎 go. Falsers, please.
So, quick question and then a following comment. My question is, with the it's not great links, but you've gone to some links, Sondsol, to hold this conversation about Vosh. And again, I agree with you on a lot of what you're saying. But my question is, did you feel the same level of conviction to talk about stochastic terrorism every time you saw a right-wing extremist mass shooting in regards to Donald Trump's rhetoric?
Yes, that is how I built my entire platform, is talking about Nazis who were going around and fucking shooting people up because of their fucking fragile little minds not being able to handle seeing brown people at the fucking supermarket. Of course I called it out then, because I don't like seeing people go out and fucking shoot up supermarkets or churches or fucking synagogues or mosques because they can't fucking go out and advocate for things peacefully. Yes, of course I did.
Lucky no
I
one's
think
doing
that's
that
great. And so my
on our
comment
side.
is,
What do you
I
mean
think it's
nobody's
important.
doing that? There's
I think it's important
15
when we
things
have
that
these
happened by the
discussions.
Nazis.
I think it's important when we have these discussions to talk about things that are useful. And again, we're not talking about something that's super useful here, because Vosh is, he's a content creator in like the Twitch Pulse space, and his reach isn't that big. And when we look at the reach of the people in the right wing that espouse the same rhetoric, and then we see the consequences of that, is a much, much, much heavier conversation. But I take issue with the entire conversation across the board. I think the entire conversation around stochastic terrorism is demagoguery. And it's important to understand what we mean when we say that word. It's political rhetoric that is seeking support by appealing to prejudices and passionate desires rather than rationality and data. That's this whole conversation. And it gaslights away from a need to address gun violence. Because frankly, it doesn't matter if Vosh had a crazy take that was extreme about transgenocide, because there's always going to be mentally ill people in the world, and he can't be 100% accountable for their actions. What does matter in a quantifiable and meaningful way is that person's access, the mentally ill person's access to acquire a firearm and utilize it. And every bit of this conversation on every side takes us further away from addressing these very, very, very real problems that we have an abundance of evidence to show that we could have solutions for.
Okay.
I'd love to go.
Can I just respond to that super quick?
Yeah.
Or
Super quick.
Go for it.
And then
Go
we
for it.
have more people
I
in
want
line.
to ask a question.
Yeah, and 𝕬𝖎𝖎 has been waiting, so go ahead.
okay, I reject the idea that we can't talk about bad rhetoric on our side because it takes away from the talk about gun legislation in the United States. That is a mainstream talking point that everybody's talking about. And in regards to this conversation, I have also talked about, I still have like ideas around like things that we can do for gun legislation to try and mitigate the amount of mass shooting events that there are. But like, that doesn't mean that I can't point out that there is the possibility of an increase of left-wing violence because of this kind of rhetoric. The transgenocide
You can. It just makes you a demagogue. You absolutely can.
I'm sorry. How am I more of a demagogue than the people who are lying that there is a genocide happening in the United States against LGBT people?
Well, it's not
with
comparative.
no evidence.
I'm not suggesting you're worse than somebody. I'm just saying, like,
but where is the demagoguery? Where I'm saying I'm not selling an ideology. I'm calling out blatant lies that they are pushing towards an entire demographic of people in order to scare them into purchasing more firearms, which it seems like you're against.
No, look, I agree that calling it like a genocide is extreme. I agree Vaush has said some super fucking out of pocket things. I agree that he's made some explicit calls to violence, and we should condemn that. The thing we don't agree on is whether or not this conversation in a larger sense is meaningful. And I don't think it is. And it's not that I'm unwilling to participate in it. I just think it misses the forest for the fucking trees, right? So
At
like,
what point would it become reasonable to talk about this? How many
Throw bows,
people
gang.
would have to be
Throw bows, get
confirmed
in.
to have gone out and committed left-wing violence as a result of the fears stoked by this rhetoric
More
for
than
you to
one-
say, okay, now we're at a problem. Now we have a
more
problem.
than 1%.
Wait, hold on. We can absolutely
it?
walk and chew gum at the same time. We can discuss this issue and then also talk about gun violence at the same time. I have plenty of videos, I have plenty of content talking about the issues with gun violence, the fact that America is the only one who seems to have this issue, and we can also say that Vosh's rhetoric is out of pocket. I don't know why we have to when we're having this conversation, we always have to add in that little disclaimer that, hey, this isn't actually that big of a deal. Because I'll agree.
Neither of those things is what Sondsol is whining about. With love.
No, I was
Yeah, but Sondsol isn't the only person on this panel, and I'm sure Saxium has his
talking
own.
to falsers.
Yeah.
I was replying to falsers. I know you yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, go on, please.
No, I was gonna say you left, so you missed it, but that's
Cut him off, Katie. Don't let him get it out.
No, that wasn't. No, but I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that we can't talk about this kind of insane rhetoric. I don't think that there has been this large uptick with left-wing violence at all. I don't think that there is any sort of justification to say, hey, this has been. I don't see any consequences right now. I want to nip this in the bud, and I want to say,
They're
hey,
not violent, they're
Vosh, you're
talkers.
fucking insane. Stop it. Like. I don't want any of his rhetoric. I want to stop this before a fucking mass shooter mentions his name in a beneficial way. And I don't think that he is at fault at all for any specific violence that has occurred yet. I just want to nip it in the butt. That's all. And I think that should be a pretty easy thing to say is, hey, don't mention the 7th stage of genocide denial or say that we're on the 7th stage of genocide when that's absolutely not justifiable in any way.
I want Uzmark to be able to go. What? I want Uzmark to be able to go.
Do you want to get into the Gregory Sansel?
Okay. No, hold on. I have a question for Sondsol, right? I think it's pretty clear that you think Vosh is doing something wrong by advocating what he's advocating. However, at what point do you think his rhetoric would be reasonable and would be justifiable? So obviously, when we're talking about transgenocide, it's there's a common understanding, I think, of everyone on the panel that it's pretty overblown. Like trans people are not undergoing a genocide. However,
Uzmark, that is not a common understanding on the panel. Just FYI. So.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, right. But I think it is clear, undeniable, that anti-trans legislation is being passed, right? So at what point do you think kind of this like revolutionary rhetoric does actually become reasonable and justifiable, Sondsol?
Yeah. So when we look at any definition of genocide, we are going to see a lead up to it. I think that people have rightly used the 10 stages of genocide that is used by Genocide Watch to kind of point out, hey, there are things that are happening that could eventually turn into something that is worse, right? I think that broadly speaking, when we talk about something that is at the point of taking violent action against the state or against political actors who are in support of that sort of legislation, there has to be something more than, anti like sports ban or anti like trans sports bans or things like that. I would be looking more towards to call it a genocide, which is what I would say is like the point where you're like, okay, well, if we're going to go down this road, this is the violence now, right? We're going to be looking at taking away people's citizenship. We're going to be talking about deportations. We're going to be talking about massive restrictions in their civil rights, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom of expression, their ability to get certain jobs or not. So like if there were or like the forcible removal of children, which they attempted in Texas, but it was overturned in our courts because our institutions fucking rock. Like those are the sorts of things that I would be saying. This is now the time where it is justifiable to use this rhetoric, but we're not there yet, right? And there's still plenty that we can do in a peaceful way that we should be advocating for instead of jumping the gun and blowing our load before it's time to.
Speaking of blowing their load, Katie, please.
Yeah, I'm confused because Uzmark, I actually think we are probably maybe on the same page than most people. I don't know why calling for people to arm themselves for self-defense purposes is a revolutionary call. I get that some people are confused, and trust me, I'm not for the Second Amendment, but if people do believe in like the right to own guns, and Americans do seem obsessed with their right to defend themselves with guns against whatever they think oppression is, then I'm not really sure what's revolutionary about like arming yourself for self-defense. I don't think it was revolutionary or is revolutionary when we tell women to own firearms to protect themselves. I don't know why it's not okay when we tell trans people to do that and how that's revolutionary. Just
No, I think I would
curious.
agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Katie. I think Vosh, the comments that he's made from what I've seen, it is clear that he's talking about this in self-defense. Now, I agree with Sondsol. It is alarming what the rhetoric that he uses, the language that he uses, but it's alarmist by intentionally, right? He wants
He
to.
says, yeah.
Yeah, he has said it's alarmist by intention. And I would agree with you. I don't think there's something inherently wrong with calling for trans people to arm themselves in the potential case that that a genocide could be looming, and there are indicators to suggest that it could be on its way.
Awesome.
So yeah, I would agree with.
About what Vosh said, though, because it wasn't just arm yourself in self-defense. It was arm yourself in self-defense and you're being genocided. And if you get an opportunity, you should take it. So, like, it's a little
And
more
there's
than
no
that.
other
Right.
recourse. That is
Right.
the biggest thing that he said, that there is no other recourse, that the Republicans, at that time, the midterms hadn't happened. He was wrong. That seems to be a growing trend with Vosh. But like he said, 2022, we're going to lose. They're going to take the House, the Senate, and then in 2024, it's a toss-up whether or not we're even going to have a chance at having a free and fair election. And if the Republicans win both in 2022 and in 2024, then at that point, what is going to happen? They're going to erode all of our institutions in a way that that there will no longer be any, like, even the pretense of a recourse that they're saying that we
Right.
So, real quick,
I would agree with you.
real quick.
Fair. That's not that
Moot
insane.
it gave me $5.
Republicans.
Moot gave me
think
money,
it is.
gang. Stop. Moot gave me money to say this. Arming inherently implies that there is a lethal force ready to attack. This is not the case right now. Therefore, self-defense rhetoric is unjustified. Okay, carry on. Staxiums, go.
No, I would agree with that. I would agree with that for sure. I don't think that it's fair to call this self-defense when we're equivocating violence so much that we're just saying, oh, in access to medical devices is violence, therefore you can shoot up, pharmacy. I don't know what exactly the rhetoric is prescribing, but
Because he never
No,
said
but the
that.
rhetoric, the rhetoric.
I don't know what he's prescribing. He's kind of leaving it intentionally vague and ambiguous. Just arm yourself, and it's like, okay, I don't see a specific person out there going to shoot me. So I understand
yourself
Sondsol.
But when we're impugning his character, we need to be quite careful, right, in analyzing the exact language that he's used. Because I could agree with you. This is a sensitive
agree.
topic.
I'm
and there's a
not
spectrum.
impugning his character necessarily. I'm just the enlightened centrist here, okay? And that's important to understand. But I will criticize Sondsol a little bit. It is kind of fair to say that Republicans are looking to completely erode our institutions. I think that's kind of been their game plan for the last 15, 16 years, ever since McConnell has been the speaker. Like, kind of their entire game plan has been... go ahead. It seems like people disagree. Go ahead.
No. I would agree with you. I would say, to be clear, from what Vosh has said, he has said that we should exhaust all democratic means that we have available to us before any sort of like violent action is taken.
But
now, I agree with Sondsol that he is saying that it is inevitable that it will come to the point where we have to use violence. So it's kind of complicated. He's on one hand, he's saying that we should exhaust all democratic means, but then he is being like fatalist and saying that it will come to a point where we have to.
I want to give Ginger a space. Ginger wants in. Go ahead, Ginger.
Sorry, I was messing with my lighting. No, I don't see how one, possibly two shooters is a reflection of anybody. Like that's a reflection of them. It's
Does anyone
one or
think that?
Okay, can I like say this for the
Who?
like
I
hopefully
don't know
the
who you're
last
pointing
time.
to. I'm sorry.
Right. For the to be ultra clear, I am trying to point out, and this is not something that I said specifically because of the trans like shooter in Nashville, right? I've been saying this since that first debate happened, right? There's a debate on my channel like 2 weeks after his debate where I argued with someone about this. This is something that I've been saying for a while. It has nothing to do specifically with the Nashville shooter, but because of the Nashville shooter's identity and because of the possibility that it has something to do with the increase in anti-trans legislation.
Okay,
right.
I'm sorry, but then I have a follow-up question. When did this start then for you?
It started, I believe, the debate that he had with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙, where he said all of the original inciting language, was 10 months ago.
So the 10 months ago, do you feel like anything's come from what he said?
No. I think that there's been some more anti-trans legislation, the worst of which has either not even seen the floor of whatever house in the states that they're being proposed in. It's been voted down or it's been shot down in the courts. This is the trend that we see with the worst bills.
All right, second follow-up question. Do you think that has anything to do with Vosh or anybody on Twitch or YouTube?
Wait, hold on. Who cares about these? We all agree that there aren't any consequences for Vosh's actions. We can use our brains here for a second and say it's not good to tell someone to pick up a gun. Is that the craziest thing in the world to say?
I don't think
It's bizarre that you don't understand that he never says that. If he says arm yourself for self-defense, whether you agree that it's self-defense or not,
okay.
if you say you don't even know what he's saying, then it's really stupid to say that he's telling people to go and
agree that he said to pick up a gun? Do we agree on
that? Arm yourself for self-defense.
Yes,
but he's already saying that it's time for
stop.
You can say
I will stop you if you don't stop. I will stop you if you don't. I will stop all of you if you don't stop. I want people to be able to respond. Go ahead, Sondsol.
Okay. The problem isn't when he says, like, prepare yourself. If you want to buy a gun, like if this was his statement, I wouldn't have any problem with it. If he said, hey guys, things are getting a little scary. I personally own a gun for personal self-defense. If you want to do that and you feel safe with a gun in your house, you should do that. And then he left it at that. I would have zero fucking problem. Pro Second Amendment, baby. If you want to have a gun and you like to go out to fucking shooting ranges and like shoot thermite because it's just a fun big boom because you like fireworks, I have no fucking problem with that. It's the things after that he says where he directly.
This is such a Twitch poll moment. Jesus Christ! The whole panel's a Twitch poll moment. It's so frustrating because I agree with so much of what is being said. Like, we all care about the same things, right? And yet we're sitting here talking about fucking Vosh tweeting 10 months ago.
No,
this
is an ongoing discourse that he pushes.
This does not matter. If you really care
then
about
why the fuck are you here?
Then we need to advocate for this. We need to be talking about the fact that almost all of the deaths from mass shootings last year were connected to right-wing extremists. Okay?
Nobody disagrees with
that. Everyone here already talks about that. But we also should
centrist argument in the chat prior to the panel.
I would like to ask this guy a question.
Republican
At
and Democrat efficacy, and the reality is Republicans have voted down now 10 gun control bills in a row with large majority support against them, while Democrats had large majority support for them. There is one side clearly doing more for regulation than the other, and this conversation just gives that side that we're all against, it sounds like, more ammunition to gaslight us away and divert from meaning.
Well, whose fault would that be?
I want to get
who's started this whole fucking discourse?
Okay, I want to
Yes,
get.
it's Vosh's fault.
I want to
Yeah,
give
for
it.
lying to
I want to
people.
give it.
Lying
I
to
want
people.
to.
Yeah,
I want to
for
give
lying
it to more
about
people.
what the facts on the ground are, Katie.
Sondsol,
It's
I promise you.
Vosh's fault,
Katie,
okay?
I
It's
promise both. Okay, my God. Okay, I promise both of you you're going to get more time to talk. I promise. But we got to get some of the more quieter people in here. I know Staxiums, I see you. We're going to give it to Ginger, then Staxiums, then 𝕬🎧 and then I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Come on.
I just want to explain what I think arming yourself means. I think arming yourself as in when, women are alone at night, women arm yourselves. Like, make sure that you have mace with you. Make sure that you have, maybe a key knife. Maybe make sure that you're well prepared just in case you do get jumped. Like, I don't see it as like grab your arms and march to shoot off the rednecks. No, like that's a righty mentality there to even think that that's what he's saying. He's not saying arm, at least from where I grasp it from. He's not saying go grab your gun and go shoot the next person that looks at you funny. It's more so make sure you know how to protect yourself, because unfortunately it's gonna happen, because that's the day and age we live in.
Staxiums.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so a few things that I want to say here. Sorry, just writing it all down. Okay, so one, if you look at my content, I make videos on TikTok. The overwhelming amount of videos, constant. I haven't actually made a single video on this subject. All of them have been about how trans people are overwhelmingly less violent than right-wingers, criticizing right-wing conservative talking points. And I thought, you know what? Vosh did say a couple fucking stupid things. I can spend 2 hours of my time and criticize what Vosh is doing and then get back on the side. I don't think that it's insane for me to just take some time away and then also recognize that there is a bigger problem at hand, but I think we should also be self-correcting at the same time. The second, we have equivocated a violence so that people hear self-defense, and instead of thinking someone attacking them, they think broad political structures and how they impose on you politically. And I think that sort of language, and then saying self-defense, meaning pick up your gun, is worrisome. That is all. That is all I'm saying. The third is that we need to stop using the 10 stages of genocide that Genocide Watch uses, because if you look at them, the most justifiable stage that we can look at is discrimination, which is the third stage. And if we read genocidewatch.com, which I know no one here has because you keep fucking citing it, it says prevention against discrimination means full political empowerment and citizenship rights for all groups in a society. Discrimination on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion should be outlawed. Individuals should have the right to sue the state, corporations, and other individuals if their rights are violated. We're not even on the third fucking step, because America has all of those things protected, because we live in a goddamn beautiful country that has institutions to protect against this shit.
Okay, I just want to add on to your point just a little bit. You're 1,000,000% right. The way that
Are you kidding me?
The way
What?
that
Katie, I promise you'll get your chance.
If you interrupt me every single time I start fucking talking, I'm going to take 10 more minutes. Every single fucking word that you say, Katie. Shut the fuck up, okay?
Okay, I can talk over you too. That's fine.
That's like an hour more fucking talking time. There's another fucking hour.
We'll do this.
Okay.
I don't mind.
No,
Wait, really quick.
stop. Okay,
I'm agreeing with
oh my
you.
God, I haven't had to mute people in a fucking while. But I guess we're gonna have to mute people today, kids. Okay, I guess I have to reestablish things. Okay, we can all, right, take our brief, concise time to make our points and allow this to be a conversation rather than just a 10-minute fucking monologue. So calm down. All of you. I am going to let Katie in next because Katie wants to respond. And then you can respond directly to her. I promise you will be given time. Because if she monologues, I will cut her the fuck off too. I don't care. I ain't scared of her. She can't do shit to me. Okay, there we go. Let's unmute and let's play this game. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think we all can recognize that, since you said it in your opening, Stack, that political violence to a certain degree is absolutely violence. I understand that you think that you have evaluated the stages of genocide. I don't care. That I've never cited that, and that's not relevant. We're not equating that violence, though. We're saying that people have the right under the Second Amendment to arm themselves for whatever.
If that's not what you're saying, then I wasn't talking to you then.
However, Yeah. You know what? You interrupted me. Never mind. I don't remember what I wanted to say. Good.
Can I add something?
Is it me or is it? I don't remember the order that you said.
𝕵𝖎𝖎, and then you.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think this is in response to Staxium's. Like, I understand that there is a difference between like a personal infringement upon someone's rights and like using self-defense in response to that. But I don't think we should hand wave away political violence as, oh, this is part of broader political structure and that violence doesn't matter. I think it doesn't. There's nothing inherently different between someone voting and getting the police to infringe upon your rights and then as compared to them actually doing it themselves. I agree there's a difference there and it should be accounted for, but I think calling for people to resist that, calling for people to resist political structures impinging upon your rights, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. And I think that's what Vosh has been doing. I would also say to 𝕬𝖎𝖙, I understand that there's broader conversations we can have regarding gun rights, gun legislation, sure, and we can engage in that, we should engage in that. However, that doesn't mean that we can't have this conversation here and there isn't relevant and important things that we can have this conversation here. Like, you know, that we have more time than just 2 hours on a WIC panel. And I think it's okay to dedicate at least one WIC panel to discussing this. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Can I respond? That was to me. Can I respond? No worries if not.
No, I will let you because stop. Stop. I'm enjoying bullying Sondsol a little bit, so I'm going to bully him a little bit. Let Staxiums go, and then Sondsol can go later.
I told you I had to fucking be aggressive so I could get my words in.
You will get your words in, I promise. Staxium, go.
No, I think I'm totally fine with calling violence political violence. My issue is that the rhetoric associated with, I don't know what to call, like the regular, the colloquial term of violence.
Interpersonal violence, maybe?
Sure, interpersonal violence, right? We got interpersonal violence and political violence. My issue is that when we all call it violence and we say the response is self-defense, what you're implying is that the response to political violence is self-defense, which isn't justifiable at all. The response to political violence is engaging with your democracy, and the response with interpersonal violence is self-defense. That's my issue. So I'm okay with equivocating this idea of violence, but let's be clear with our terms, and I don't think Vosh is.
Sondsol. Oh, well, no, 𝕬𝖎𝖎. No. 𝕬𝖎𝖎, respond. I didn't know you wanted to respond to that.
Vosh using the 10 stages of genocide is the same way that he uses the 14 points of fascism, meaning that he looks at the literal fucking headings, discrimination, symbolization, he doesn't actually read what the fuck any of these things mean, right? The same way that he uses the 14 points of fascism to try and point out what a fascist is, right? Which means that literally anyone who's a populist is a fascist, which he wouldn't fucking agree with. But that's the way that he uses these things. He doesn't know what they mean, and that's why when I brought it up earlier, I was trying to agree with what you were trying to say. Staxiums. So yes, I think that you're 100% right. When you look at the things that are actually said in the 10 stages of genocide, that is 100% not what they're actually saying. Now, what you
okay, you made a point. You made a whole point.
Last point.
Like, look, you've been saying last point and briefing concise for a long time. Oh my god.
Okay, nothing wrong with fighting against your rights being taken away. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But you have to like draw a line at where that is acceptable. I don't think we're nearly at that point.
Okay, we got it. Cool.
Does Katie want to go?
I'll give it to Katie. She's dying.
Cryborn, mute hard with a vengeance. Cryborn has paid me $5 to mute hard with a vengeance. Don't worry, it's coming. I'm stretching. I'm getting ready. Katie.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so Sondsol, Vosh bad. Vosh is a bad political streamer. You don't have to listen to him. He makes bad prescriptions. He doesn't know anything. Okay, cool, great. If that's how you feel, good for you. That's fine. Awesome. Moving on from that hate boner, that is very important. What I did find interesting that you said, Staxium, is like, honestly, on a personal level, I totally agree with you, right? On the distinction between self-defense for interpersonal defense. The problem is that you're an American, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know that. Americans are really stupid. And they have the Second Amendment, which is really stupid as well. And they have this notion about like arming themselves to protect themselves from like governmental oppression and all that type of paranoia nonsense. So they do colloquially use this concept of like self-defense to defend themselves from like a tyranny. So while I agree with you, unfortunately Americans are too dumb to actually get what you're saying.
Wait, if you're saying that the right does it too, I agree. They're fucking idiots as well. 100%. No,
to clarify
conservatives
something,
shouldn't be using self-defense
like
against the
15
government
times.
either.
To clarify something, I
agree.
think Vosh has, I think, made clear in that debate that Sondsol linked, the one that he's referenced. He said that whilst we still have the option, we should use democratic means to prevent or counter this sort of like political, like broader societal violence.
But what does he follow that up with?
The distinction he made was that when it comes to the point where that democratic system is no longer viable as a means to secure your rights, that is when it becomes like in the realm of interpersonal violence, and like a call for arms is necessary and justified.
And he says that we're already at that point. That's the biggest thing. Because
he says we're on the precipice. He says we're on the precipice, and I'll give you that. And I'll also give you that he also said that this is it's fatalistic in nature, and he said that it will inevitably get to this point. I'll agree with you there, but I think it's important, like when we're discussing a topic as sensitive as this, to clarify that he didn't say we're at the point yet, not right now at this moment, but we're on the precipice. That's what he said.
I have a question for the panel. Does anyone on the panel think there's a transgenocide going on?
I don't
No.
think there's a transgenocide, but I don't think that rhetoric is too alarmist for me. I'm fine with that.
So it sounds like we all agree there's not like an actual transgenocide. Is that fair? We all agree.
Could there be something that's more alarmist than a genocide?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the word
totally
is really being misused.
What's worse than a genocide?
It starts to lose its merit.
Holocaust?
We're on board there. So my next question is: does anyone?
What are you talking? The Holocaust was a genocide.
It is a genocide. That's a
really bad one.
That's where the word genocide got coined from.
You guys. Thank you, you all. I was really confused. I didn't know the Holocaust was a genocide.
Okay, stop.
When you say genocide, every single goddamn American you will ask will automatically think Holocaust. I don't know what to tell you. Every single person who
I got $5. I got $5 from Miss Millie. She says to mute Katie. We're not paying for mutes right now. Like, we're not paying for mutes right now. I'm not going to mute him for money, unfortunately. But yeah, keep giving me money, and I'll keep reading your things. So go
it feels like we all kind of agree on the genocide thing. So my next question is:
No. I need to address this because everyone is confused by.
Me too. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm not confused at all.
Yeah.
Apparently, maybe we don't all agree.
Today I learned that the Holocaust was a genocide. I'm so glad for this panel for teaching me.
We love to educate, Katie.
Yeah, I know that since the American education system have failed most of you, you don't understand that while the Holocaust is a genocide, there are also other genocides that exist.
No, we're familiar with that too.
Can you name like 2 or 3 that are happening right now?
Armenian genocide, that one's generally the most cited one. We could talk about the Uyghurs.
You talking over me.
The Armenian genocide and the Holocaust is actually where the genocide got coined.
Okay. Well,
so what was your point?
I got cut off for that. That was all very valuable. So my next question is: do we all, for the most part, agree that maybe there's like degrees in difference on the level of accountability, but that Vosh has some sort of accountability for speaking irresponsibly? Are we all in agreement on that?
When we say accountability, are you saying for current actions? Because I wouldn't even say he's accountable for like any specific shootings or anything.
Not necessarily. I think that goes into like the degrees of accountability there, like how many things you want to tie it to. But we all seem to be on the same page that like he's been a little too aggressive with how he's chose to approach these things in communication. Is that fair?
That would depend on the outcomes, I think. Whether to say that he's been too aggressive, we need to see the
I don't want to wait
for the outcomes. That's like degrees. So here's what's interesting is the bigger point I was building up to is a lot of these panels in Twitch poll, we do this thing where we all generally agree and we start to get further and further into like the minutia and the nuance until we find like the really minute disagreements and then we yell about them for an hour. And it's funny that was my bigger point because Katie literally interrupted me to argue the definitional nuance of homicide versus genocide versus a Holocaust. And it's just
completely irrelevant.
Again, like it's not that I don't think these discussions can be had. It's not that I don't think we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. It's just the way in which we have them is super just unproductive. Like we all kind of generally agree on these things, right? And so why are we like dissecting it down to the point where like there's just like these little petty things that we're going to yell at each other about?
Well,
I too find it so unproductive when we choose to talk about a topic and then we all come together and then we all decide that this is completely unproductive. Let's talk about a completely different topic that wasn't part of the initial thing.
I don't think no. I think there's plenty of relevant topics based on, because you laid out like your initial argument in there, and I think there's plenty of relevant topics we could talk about. Specifically, one that I would love to talk about is you made a statement that both you either said the Democrats and Republicans are the right or the left. Forgive me, it was one of the
Sure.
two. Neither of them is doing anything to solve these problems, and I found that to be a very unreasonable equivocation.
We can get into like gun legislation, sure. I think that the reason that we don't have the kind of gun legislation that we might need is because we don't really even know, because everyone's so committed to one extreme or the other. But
why do you think we don't know?
I'd like to kind of wrap up at least attempt
before
to find something.
we all came here to talk about the topic at hand. We can get into that. And that is definitely
and I'm totally
something
willing to if you want to later.
But I do know that some people have some, and I have some lingering questions on this, because again, it has been, if I may, indulge me, panel. I apologize. I know you all want to speak. I have seen people call libs of TikTok, Matt Walsh, people on the right that are much smaller, Rob Noor, counterpoints on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, right? And say they are all responsible for and Sondsol has been accused of being contributing to the anti-trans sentiment in America. I think Falsers even, you mentioned that hosting this panel is a form of running defense. I don't know if you used that words, but that was kind of implied, right? Running defense for these people, right? And so I thought it was interesting to see what it would look like when we turn the same lens onto the left, and to see if we would hold the same positions and hold those same opinions. And Brianna Wu has paid me $5 to say, wish I could be there to defend Vosh, but I'm on vacation. He's a good person and deserves a lot more respect than he gets. Okay, and with that, I think that, yes, I understand that there are different outcomes, but Stochastic made an interesting point, and I want to talk about it. Just because it hasn't happened yet, if we are seeing the same pattern play out, why would we expect a different outcome? What is different between the left and the right that the same rhetoric is going to lead to different outcomes? Question, Stochastic, go.
Yeah, one, I do not want to say, I don't want to draw any sort of similarity between fucking libs of TikTok and Matt Walsh and Vosh. I want to be so clear on that one. They are so much more aggressive on their doxing, on their rhetoric, on their clarifications. I mean, we had Michael Knowles say that he wanted to eradicate transgenderism at CPAC. Like, these are not comparable in the slightest. I am talking so much more shit about Michael Knowles than I am about Vosh, and I want to really stake my foot in the ground there.
I agree with the bigger point that Stochastic was making right there, of when you say it's the same rhetoric, I don't think it is. And I think the gravity that one side has over the other when we talk about where the rhetoric is coming from is worth pointing out too. So when we talk about stochastic terrorism from the left, again, we're talking about fucking Vosh. And when we talk about it from the right, we're talking about the president of the United States. Those are very different things. We're talking about it coming from like a Fox News person or somebody at CPAC, like people that have much bigger and more impactful platforms. And I want to clarify, my position is not necessarily, Wick, that like by hosting this panel, you're having a negative impact. I would not be here if I didn't think there was a value in the conversation. My position is simply that I think part of the conversation is worth looking at where we should focus our energy.
Fair enough. For $2, Extreme Dad has paid me to say Vosh is a bad person, one of the worst, except DK. Okay, I'll let that just sit there. So,
Okay.
go ahead, Sondsol.
I don't think that in the grand scheme of things that Vosh has nearly as much reach as Matt Walsh or as Libs of TikTok. I don't think anyone here is going to deny that. But the way that online discourse works is when there are people with large platforms putting out different kinds of narratives or putting out different kinds of rhetoric, that can spread. We can see that that kind of stuff can spread, right? When we look at this situation in specific, I don't think I heard anybody, and I actually specifically went out of my way to find anybody, whether it was an organization, an individual, anything that was like a pro-trans person or organization that talked about the ongoing trans genocide. And I did this in like early March. And I couldn't find a human rights campaign, any other like trans positive organization. None of them talked about trans genocide. Suddenly, immediately after the Nashville shooting, now I'm seeing it fucking everywhere. It was contained to our little side of the internet. I thought it was really, really shit and like bad rhetoric that could lead to bad outcomes. And now we're seeing it spread elsewhere because there are people who are also Vosh fans who have large Twitter accounts who put out this kind of rhetoric, and then that gets picked up by people who follow them who might have large platforms as well. And that sort of idea can spread around. And we can see that spreading around right now because if you Google trans genocide now, you're going to get a lot of hits on Google. Where you
But is it a
wouldn't have
bad
at the
thing? Is that a bad thing that the discourse
Yes.
around trans genocide is spreading?
Yes,
But if-
because there's not a trans genocide right now. That's
Right.
the problem. And when you presuppose that there is a genocide, the next necessary step, because a genocide would imply that there's, people dying or people are about to be rounded up and killed, and that action needs to be taken now. And anybody, and even by Vosh's own admission in the debate that you were referencing that I linked in the group chat earlier, right? He said, at what point would the Jews have been justified in taking self-defense measures against the Nazis?
Right.
When would they have been, justified in killing
Okay.
Nazi
So Vosh
politicians?
is
Just real quick
Vosh
before
is
you
a
respond,
cons-
the Phoenix 215s paid me money, $2, to say Katie is based. Vosh sucks. Okay,
Right.
go ahead.
So Vosh is a consequentialist, and I think he would argue that this rhetoric around transgenocide, even if people like normies discuss it and come to the conclusion that a genocide is not happening, it can spur the conversation around trans rights being infringed upon, and that in and of itself is a good thing. If that conversation, even if reasonable people come together and be like, hey, no, there's not a trans genocide going on, like alarmist rhetoric is probably a bit too far, but hey, look, they do have a point that there is some anti-trans legislation being passed, and hey, that's a bad thing. Like, it creates a recognition around that. If that is the case, I'm not saying, we're purely hypothetically here, if it's the case that talking about trans genocide does lead to better consequences, right, and more awareness around trans issues, would it then be a reasonable or like a good thing?
It absolutely doesn't, because the people that are pro-trans legislation,
My question
they're already
was-
there, and the people that aren't turn their ears off when they hear an extremist say transgenocide.
My
and you
question
lose
was
the plot.
if. My question was if.
I'll engage with the hypothetical. If that is the case, that it's beneficial, 100%. We should be talking about the trans genocide all the time. 1,000,000%. I'm a consequentialist as well. But the reality is that when someone says, oh, there is a genocide happening against trans person, any reasonable human being will hear that and go, holy shit, you're so fucking stupid, and then turn their
I'd agree with
Turn
you.
their
That
brains
probably is
off.
the
The
case.
brains is the word you want.
Can I answer your question as well?
Sure,
Because,
yeah.
like, in order for us to know that there would be positive consequences, or in order for us to like use this rhetoric now, we would have to know that there would be positive consequences. But we don't know that. But when we look at other groups who have used this kind of rhetoric in order to, galvanize their base, whether they intended for people to go out and use that rhetoric to go out and shoot people up, right? Whether they intended that or not, it did happen, right? And if we use that as some sort of, marker that, hey, this kind of rhetoric pushes people to do really, really bad things.
Okay,
I don't know why we can't say that Vosh is doing the exact same thing.
Ginger.
I feel like one of the majorities of what's the difference between the left and the right, or what the left says is different from the left and the right, is that that's not the mentality from the left. is to go out there and blow things up or shoot things out, like, type thing. Yeah, there are going to be the few cases that actually do that, but to say the majority would, I don't know. I feel like you're um, kind of just basically saying that we do have the same mentality whether we like it or not. So I
Wait,
mean,
who's saying
what
that the
is the difference?
majority of who's saying that the majority of left wingers are committing
He,
violence?
I'm saying that's not what I said at all. Listen,
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I misheard you. My bad.
what I'm saying is that he's saying it as him saying that can cause the left to do that, as it has in the right spheres when their leaders have said certain similar things. But in my experience, the left has always tried to prove that that's not who they are, and that's why they dislike the right so much. One of the reasons why they dislike the right so much is because they're so quick to anger, they're so quick to do those things without thinking it through, without um, without actual reasons. I don't know. I don't see it happening as
Totally.
easily as it does on the right.
So if you
So,
feel like we
can-
are starting to engage in violent rhetoric, we should probably nip that in the bud, else the left will fall apart. You agree?
I'm sorry, what?
So you agree that the pacifist nature of left wingers, the fact that they are generally anti-war, anti-quick to violence, anti-gun, all of those things are one of the huge strong points of like the foundational ideas of the left that brings so many people close together. So if you feel like we are starting to shift away from that, that would probably be detrimental to the left and our activism, correct?
Yes, but I don't think that we're shifting over that way.
Well, I
I
want to
don't. No,
criticize
I
it
don't.
any
I
time
don't.
that we start shifting.
Okay,
I
know.
can- I can-
understand that, but a few bad apples do not make a bad bunch.
I'm
Like,
not saying there's a bad bunch.
would
I'm
anybody
still
make the
winning.
same argument for conservatives who went out and who's used this
no,
rhetoric and went out and
because
shot?
that's a million versus a handful.
So
I agree.
just
Those are
because
millions of people versus a
agree we're
handful.
only
So
criticizing
here's
a
the problem with
handful.
what you're saying.
Let's criticize them.
I'm not saying
really
don't.
quick.
No, wait.
I
I'm not
understand that
saying
you're
don't
saying-
criticize them at all. I'm saying they
course.
should be criticized, but to act like it could lead to some sort of like revolution, it's not going to. Like,
Okay, so I have a study right here, right, that talks about the differences in political violence between liberals, conservatives, and jihadists, right? In the middle of the page, it says, more generally, there's growing evidence suggesting that extremists representing different ideologies may have more in common than has been assumed. For example, extreme liberals and conservatives, liberals and conservatives, they're just distinguishing left and right, as opposed to like liberalism and conservatism.
Yeah.
right?
Go ahead.
So, for example, extreme liberals and conservatives both represent the social world in a similar, simplistic way, which distinguishes both groups from more moderate individuals. In studies of behavior and conflict, one study found that both right-wing and left-wing extremists use more negative and angrier language than moderates did. Finally, a strong inclination to defend one's beliefs against worldview violating groups and a low tolerance for such groups has been identified for both liberals and conservatives. Taken together, this research suggests that left-wing and right-wing extremists could be equally likely to use violence to pursue their ideological goals.
Well, it could be, but that would be a very weird usage of it that doesn't take other things into context. Like, I kind of agree with Ginger's bigger point here, which is
What
that
things would need to be taken into
while
context?
while we sit here and talk about this, like they're just radically different pictures when we look at the right and the left. Because I mean, I've got studies too of like, again, almost all the deaths of mass shooters in 2022 were victims of right-wing violence. There's only 1% of shooters that are trans, are identified as trans.
And this study would agree with
there
you.
was a comment made earlier about like the United States is so great and efficient. We have 18 times the murder rate of the UK, a comparable country. The USA only beats Brazil in gun deaths and is followed immediately by like Venezuela, which is 2/3 the amount. Those countries aren't even anywhere near as far along as we are. The next like rich country that's close to the US in terms of like homicides by firearms is Chile. Like, it's not even close. And then the next one down is Canada, and they have 8 times less than we do.
Okay,
So,
when I
like,
was
Hey,
when I
I
was
have a
loading
majority
question.
of that exists on the right.
But,
those are
I'm
supposed
but
to mean-
this,
For the
but that doesn't
conversations.
go against what I just said. This is simply saying that when you look at the extremes,
I think it
they-
does.
they're- no, because this this study says exactly what you just said, except for you don't think that there's the possibility of extreme left-wing violence, whereas this
Not
study
in the same
says
way
that
that there is on the right, because again,
Okay.
we're
Why?
talking about
Okay, we're
Vosh,
circling the
they're
drain.
talking about Donald
So
Trump. We
he
don't have a
responded to
person
me,
like
so
that
I'd like to.
galvanize us.
Well, first,
It's
I want to
not
give
fair.
Katie a chance, because Katie's
It's not
going to
fair.
die if I don't give her a chance to speak. Go ahead, Katie.
So we're.
About what?
You were wanting to get in earlier. You got kicked off. I'm allowing you the chance to get in. Go ahead.
Yeah, Falsers is right. There is no left violence. I do think it's hilarious that Sondsol and Steak are sitting here whining about Vosh trying to predict the future with him predicting genocide when they're here predicting that his rhetoric would cause negative outcomes that don't exist in reality. I do find that hilarious. Also, Vosh bad, Vosh very bad. Let's talk about gun violence now so we can move
I actually
on
want to
from
move this conversation into healthcare because Katie needs to get her ears checked out. Because holy fucking shit, we've already fucking said, what the fuck, dude? I'm losing my fucking mind. I don't know how many fucking times we have to say that yes, right-wing extremists have gone out and killed way more fucking people than left-wing people. But you are presupposing in the same way that you're saying that, oh, Vosh is looking into the future and predicting this thing. We're talking about the possibility of this happening because of the extremist rhetoric and the what was the word that 𝕬𝖎𝖙 used earlier?
You
Fatalistic.
literally just said what I said.
I don't know. Can I say this? Can I say this? Vosh is overwhelmingly good. Okay, does that
Great.
make your? I'll go ahead and suck his dick for you. I think that I'm just frustrated a little bit with
I
his.
don't want you to suck his
Right.
dick.
Can
We
I
all
ask
said
do.
that he's
I do
bad.
though. I don't think you
I wanna-
understand. I do. But let me respond to what I'm sorry, Falser said about me saying that the U.S. was the best. I am not saying that the U.S. is the best in terms of gun violence. I'm saying that the U.S. does not have broad institutions that is in any way comparable to Germany in the 1940s, to Turkey in the 1910s, to China currently. We
a low
have
bar.
the institutions and sorry, what was that?
That's a low bar.
I agree. That's what genocide is. Genocide is a low bar, and that's why
But I'm not
saying.
taking
Genocide is a really high.
Or what? No, I'm
when
saying
you say it's
that
a low bar, what do you mean?
what I
Oh,
mean
God.
is that that is a ridiculous standard to put ourselves up to. So anything that's currently happening in America, we compare that to genocide. Yeah, it's going to be extremely insane.
I
And
didn't
that's
compare
why
to
I
that.
mentioned
compared
it.
it to comparable countries in terms of wealth and development.
I know, but you were referring to me. That's what I was saying. So I'm saying don't take my words out of context. I was referring to
you
the
and
impact of the
Sondsol
genocide.
were talking
I've
about
got a
how
question for
America's great.
Sondsol.
Of course, I would agree that America is
Sure,
the
go for it.
worst in terms of gun violence. Of course.
Right. So I think, Sondsol, I think that you said that this recent shooting that happened in Tennessee and the one in Colorado, you don't blame Vosh for that, right?
No.
Right.
The
So-
full stance would be that there's the possibility, but we don't know because those manifestos haven't been fully released. But because of his rhetoric and depending on what their motive was, if I were him, I would have tiptoed around the topic until we knew.
So the question is, if Vosh isn't responsible for those shootings, those bad actions, what harm has he caused? What is he doing wrong?
I don't think he's done any harm yet.
It's
Right.
the possibility. It's the
Correct.
possibility.
Correct. If I say, go pick up this gun and fucking shoot someone, and I just say that out loud into the world, if no one does it, that doesn't make it good that I said it. I would still criticize you and say, hey, you don't know what the fuck could have happened there.
No, but
Maybe shut your
even-
mouth next time.
No, but even me saying, if I just say, if someone infringes upon your rights, you are justified in committing violence against them. That could potentially, right?
There's going to
Potentially,
be-
there's a tiny possibility for someone to hear that, and they'll interpret it in their crazy brain.
Right? Line somewhere. It's a spectrum,
course.
right? There's gonna be literally handing someone a gun, and there's gonna be on the other side, oh, that person was kind of mean to me. There's gonna be a spectrum here, and I think Vosh is coming towards the uncomfortable side of the spectrum, where I think he's engaging in a little bit too much more violent rhetoric, and I'd say, hey, bring it back, buddy, you fucking crazy person. You're being a little insane right now.
Right. So the question to Sondsol again is his rhetoric, if we put aside the violent actions that have happened, is his rhetoric harmful in and of itself, even if those shootings never happened? and why?
The my critique of Vosh is one of wanting to prevent something before something bad happens. Again, this conversation started off and is still about, but it's kind of moved all over the place. It is about stochastic violence, right? Going off of Vosh's own definition and the people that he's criticized for being stochastic terrorists, right? And their rhetoric around things like the Great Replacement theory, right? He himself is engaging in that same action. When we look at those people, and if we were to take his word for it, he is he is creating this media environment that could push people to go out and shoot people.
Maybe if
Not
I
only
say
do I
it.
think it's bad. This is the last point I'm going to say. Even you spoke and it made me lose my train of thought. Holy fuck! Sorry, go for it.
Okay, so let me try. Maybe if I say it, maybe it can people understanding can be given. But first, before I say it, $5 from Moodit to say props to Staxiums and Sondsol for not falling into the trap and defending outrageous positions. Continue the good work and keeping this debate on topic. Thank you. I won't take sides with the Staxiums and Sondsol. I won't do that. But I will say, let's try this. We recognize that the harm that slurs have done to minority communities over the years. We recognize that it is a real harm, that it acts as a way to discriminate, and it's hurt people, right? And we can say that that's the reason we don't like to use these slurs and we want to discourage their use, is because it has done harm, and if we continue to do it, it will continue to do harm. Much in the same way, we would say that slurs against non-minority groups, slurs against white people, they may not do the same harm now, right? But there is a potential for that to happen. And so we want to discourage it, because we know if you do this over a long enough time, this will be the result. So when we look at stochastic violence, right? And we look at calls to stochastic violence. We know that if you do it over enough time, if you increase, or at least this is a theory, I disagree with the theory, but if we do this over enough time, right, that the interactions will increase against certain groups, and some portion of those interactions will be negative, and a portion of those negative interactions will be violent. So by putting them in a spotlight and putting them in a spotlight in a negative way, it increases the chance of lone wolf shooters to come out of the woodwork and do this violence. And we can see, while yes, these are not yet at the same comparable level, we need to stop it before it becomes at the same comparable level.
How do you know?
How are we not only will people die, because not only
is that a vibe check?
Is that a vibe check? First of all, $10 from Killian.
Hold on,
no,
Katie,
$10 says you don't speak right now. And I read this tweet, which is, how many big cities where the majority of gun violence happens have conservative gangs running around murdering each other? Sick of hearing about righties running around killing everyone. Extreme Dad for $2 says, Vosh, I'm calling you out. Fight me in the content creators clash. Okay, I've said that. We've done that. Thank you for the
Katie, what an
bid
absurd
from Epons.
Reading out a
Katie,
racist thing for $10.
Katie.
How awesome.
I didn't even hear it.
Katie, what an absurd...
can you stop attacking my positions before you understand them? It's super frustrating.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me attack
right?
them, and then if you disagree with my understanding of your position, you can clarify. Does that sound good? That's how conversations work. So let me just try my best. I'm gonna go ahead and say, what an absurd benchmark you have to meet is that you know what the consequences are. When Michael Knowles said that we should eradicate transgenderism, he wasn't aware of where the consequences were going to be. And you could say, well, look, we don't know that it's going to engage in violence. Okay, but we can use our brains and not be so autistic for half a second and realize that maybe there's some language that's going to be more inflammatory than others, and we should discourage inflammatory and violent rhetoric. It's crazy. This is a hot take.
Okay, so maybe you think that it's autistic to feel that way, but maybe other people feel it's autistic to feel like him saying that is going to lead to mass shootings and more gun violence, just because two people, possibly one, have done it. I mean, can you think for yourselves, or do you just repeat, or do you just feel like you're going to do whatever the higher person says to do?
I don't know if I understood your question at all. I'm sorry. So you're saying I'm just I don't understand
I
it.
can
Sorry.
explain it. So what she's saying is like, do you
Go to
think that,
mansplain it for me.
Yeah, I'm going to mansplain. My understanding of what she said was that can you think for yourself, or do you think that someone saying this stuff is going to automatically make people go out and commit these crimes? Do I have that right?
I don't care about the. I care about. As a rule, we should discourage violent rhetoric whenever we see it.
Nobody's saying that we should discourage it, but to say that you could be part of a huger movement because of it is just kind of nonsense. Like,
I'm not saying
I understand where you're coming from because you're afraid that people are going to take him for his word and believe that there's transgenocide and there's people out to hurt them, but that doesn't mean arm up and go for it just because one unhinged individual says so.
Okay, but
the problem is, I think a big part of it is that we agree.
100,000 fucking followers, and so do Keffels, and so do Demon Mama, and all of these people. They probably round out to an influence of about 1 million people. And if it was just some random fucking person on the street, I'd slap him upside the head and say, "Hey, fucking Quidditch, chill
But
a little
also,
bit."
just to,
when
Ginger,
we
just
need
to
to stop these things, there's only two ways we can stop stochastic terrorism, right? So one is through like legislation, censorship, things like that, and the other is really through like social pressure. And what does social pressure turn into in terms of like real world application? Well, it's us just agreeing that it's a bad thing to do, condemning it, saying, "Hey, you shouldn't do this." And we've accomplished that, but we're all there. I think that's what Ginger said.
Accomplished that because you've been pushing against us having that conversation from the beginning of the conversation, since the beginning of the panel.
No,
but
Katie, we all
what
said
you're saying,
Vosh is bad. Let us talk about gun violence.
Oh my God.
Crying out loud.
There's not really a conversation to have.
Can I respond to Ginger just super quick? Okay, Ginger, to what you're saying, the fact that yes, these people are like niche micro celebrities on the internet. Yeah, that's true. But this was something that was relatively relegated to just their circle of things. But immediately after the Nashville shooting, we do see a massive surge in people talking about a genocide against trans people that do have large platforms, and this rhetoric is getting out there.
Why?
That's the problem.
Why is that happening, Sondsol? Why? Is it because
there's a trans genocide, Katie?
Can you answer my questions?
Ask it.
Why is it happening? I think people are talking about trans genocide because Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh started saying crazy shit like they knew trans was the pure evil all along, and now we finally have.
Well, Vosh was saying this 10 months ago.
Well, I guess Michael Knowles and are finally like taking Vosh's word and are running with it. Come the fuck on.
Does Michael Knowles and does Matt Walsh have the capability of enacting a genocide?
Do you think I'm saying that they do?
No, I don't think that you're saying that. But what the implication of what you're trying to get across is that because there are people that are out there saying incredibly fucking hateful things, that we are now justified in calling something that is not a genocide.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Sondsol.
Oh, okay.
We can do this.
That was
We're
the implication.
So close. Okay, no, that was not an implication. You're saying, hey, now this mass shooting happened, and now everyone's talking about trans genocide, and I'm like, well, maybe some people heard Vosh, but I think the reason why some people are talking about trans genocide a lot more loudly in common parlor is because conservative media has went absolutely bonkers using this one trans person that committed a mass shooting to demonize all trans people in a way that is quite harmful to trans people.
I'll even agree with you.
If you switch the situation there and you looked at the Buffalo shooting and the immediate aftermath of people calling Tucker Carlson a stochastic terrorist for what he was saying on his show like a month or two before the shooting happened, do you think that you would hold the same position? Because that's exactly the argument they made to say that Tucker Carlson was not a stochastic terrorist.
This is for Falsers and Katie for $5. Moodit asks, even if we removed all guns from the U.S. right now, and I guess he's not asking, he's telling you, even if we removed all guns from the U.S. right now, that still doesn't make violent rhetoric okay.
No one is taking the position that violent rhetoric is okay.
Yeah,
no one's taking a position.
That was
except for Katie, who seems to be like really hardcore defending literally every aspect of what Vosh said.
I don't think that's her
except
point.
for
and I've never agreed with Katie on a panel. This is a first for me. I'm a Katie agreement virgin, but I don't think that's her point.
I am kind of struggling to understand, Katie, what exactly you are advocating for. Then, like, if you agree with Sondsol,
am
and
I
it seems we all
I don't
seem
agree
to
with
be.
Sondsol.
Wait, no, but we agree in that Vosh's rhetoric is bad, right? I think there's general consensus on that, right?
It's bad. Can you clarify that for me?
It's causing bad outcomes.
We haven't
like in a
seen
kind of
any bad outcomes yet. Can you specify those bad outcomes for me that it's causing? That we haven't seen because they don't exist
I gotta take
yet?
a bio break.
Right. So
I
would.
in that case,
Let me respond. So I would agree with Sondsol that the trans genocide rhetoric is muddying the waters, and I can see a very strong case, like at least conceptually, that kind of rhetoric would be turning people away from trans movements because it seems so extreme. Like,
I agree.
we don't have
evidence.
We don't have evidence for that, but conceptually, I would assume that is the case. Would you agree that that is the case?
Let me tell you. I think the worst outcomes Vosh's rhetoric does is that it alienates it alienates liberals and conservatives from progressive plight. That is by far the worst outcome of what Vosh is doing. Vosh is doing optical damage to our cause for gun control with this type of stuff.
We live in a democracy.
We're in agreement.
Optical damage has political power. Right, they have political consequences.
I need
Stacks,
to
I don't
stop
think
interjecting every time I talk. I swear to
I
God.
waited until after you were done with your sentence, but we can
That's great.
check the stenographer if you disagree.
No, Stacks, I don't think you need to go so hard. So I think we are in agreement then, right? That Vosh should probably tone this rhetoric down.
We all agree on that like 20 minutes ago.
No, we keep saying we all agree.
You say that, but then she says the opposite.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so,
I just know. I
have a question. I
want to tone
Katie,
the temperature down a bit and like ask her. Like,
I'll be really
I want to read a $5 super chat I got. Are we not going to consider that violent rhetoric only normalizes violence and makes a genocide more likely? This is from Fondue. Okay, carry on. Go ahead.
Okay, Katie, if there's no consequences now, which is what you're saying,
the person who asked me a question?
Wait, stop saying that you're cutting people off and then cut people off. I swear to God.
You said that there's no consequences right now, so we shouldn't be here like criticizing it because there's no bad consequences. Does that mean that we should never criticize bad rhetoric because there's no bad consequences of that rhetoric now? Because if so, shut the fuck up about Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles in regards to a trans genocide.
Katie,
so, Osmar,
go ahead.
Wait, I want to hear.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Katie, go ahead.
Answer you. I was just like, that's irrelevant. Okay, so what I was saying is that I think it depends on your goal. Do I think Vosh's rhetoric actually advocates for trans people to start murdering conservatives? Of course not. That's absurd. He's arguing for people to use their Second Amendment right. I think that's cringe because the Second Amendment is cringe. But that's like just a Vosh thing. Vosh bad. Okay. In terms of if you care about optical ability to sway liberals and conservatives, I think the trans genocide rhetoric is alienating. However, I think it has other reasonable utilities. So I wouldn't say that it's bad, but I'd understand why people would say that it's not optically beneficial in the way that they want optics to be used. Do you get what I'm saying?
What's the positive utility?
I think Vosh and like his orbiting club are creating a space that at least allowed some trans people feel like they're being heard in a real way. I feel like they feel protected, like they have a community, at least in the Vosh circle. I think there's a level of like basically community building that it does. Under a level of like, I don't think it's imagined oppression. I think they're obviously being treated very badly. So I do think that it gives people a sense of like safety, but I don't think he's driving them to violence. So I don't really care.
Okay, so you're saying that the positive utility in saying that there's a trans genocide ongoing right now is that it creates a safe space for trans people in their community, and it allows them to build their community. What you're essentially saying right now is that it is making their communities and their platforms larger, and they are benefiting off of that. That is the consequence of this.
So
is that
if I could interpret, if I could,
what I'm saying is that Vosh as rhetoric makes trans people feel like they are seen and their plight are seriously considered.
Do you have to use genocide
Can I
to do that?
continue to speak? Thank you. Because liberals and conservatives generally are pretty dismissive of anti-trans legislation, and they just say we have strong institutions, America is great, woohoo! So what if people try to pass a law to hurt trans people? Who cares? Woohoo! America is awesome.
Because the
then
institutions
Vosh,
protected the trans people.
I'm gonna finish talking. So Vosh, recognizing that that's actually pretty harmful and disgusting and dystopian, makes people feel like somebody sees their plight and the struggle that they're facing. Yeah,
But
the
that
genocide
presupposes that
rhetoric.
there's a genocide.
The genocide
Sorry, I'm
rhetoric
cutting you off
is-
too much. I'll mute myself.
I'm aware. The genocide rhetoric, yeah, is not effective for liberals or conservatives. I don't think it's meant for that. I think it's meant for progressives.
I think I would agree with you. Like, I think we can all we can reason out that there could be some utility in Vosh's rhetoric, right? But I think, Katie, you agree with us that on balance, on whole,
wait! This is stupid. Let me tell you why, right? Under what circumstances is causing a group to like feel good, right, enough to justify violent rhetoric? I can make a lot of groups feel good and feel seen.
No. Wick,
you're talking about the white genocide. I feel seen, right?
There is no violent rhetoric.
Wait, Rick, you interrupted before I could finish, right? Like, I can see that there could be some utility there in making these people feel protected. However, I think, Katie, I think we all agree that on balance, right, if we would have some sort of like calculus, if we were like some like omnipresent being and we could evaluate on like overall, this is... Yeah, as true utilitarian would, that on balance, this is a negative thing, and Vosh is bad, for lack of a better word, for what he's advocating for. I think we all agree with that.
I just want to let it known. I just want to let it known that I do not agree that there has not been violent rhetoric spewed by Vosh. I'm just saying that it does. I don't see it having the same outcome as, say, like Nick Fuentes' spiel on violence.
No, I would say Nick Fuentes is way worse.
We're looking at the...
explaining it to
I didn't
other
realize...
side, not you. I'm sorry.
I didn't realize that you weren't done. This is the problem, is that when we look at...
Yeah, I didn't realize you were not done, and then you just...
Vosh's own definition...
Okay, let Katie finish real quick. You gotta let Katie finish real quick, but she has to be quick or I won't let her finish. Katie, finish. You got about 30 seconds to land this plane.
Okay. Osmar, I agree with you that on a holistic take, yeah, it's probably more bad than good. I just don't think that's what Vosh is focusing on. I think he's looking to do specific change for progressive people, and that's why he's using that rhetoric. I do agree that generally, outside of what he's trying to convince progressives to do, yeah, it's mostly, it's not good for us optically, for sure. Also, fuck you, Wick.
But Katie, you acknowledge his intent doesn't necessarily change the outcome, right?
No, of course.
Okay.
Intent is relevant to outcomes.
And also, Ginger, by Vosh's own definition of stochastic terrorism, the people that he has called a stochastic terrorist, like Nick Fuentes. Fuentes hasn't been named in any manifestos. He's never been named directly, right? But we all, for some reason, can recognize that Fuentes' rhetoric is something that could go out or cause someone to go out and cause violence. Lauren Southern's rhetoric is something that could go out and cause violence. You know, Stefan Molyneux, Matt Walsh, all these people, Tucker Carlson, we can recognize all of their rhetoric could possibly cause someone to go out and commit violence. But for some reason, yes, and it has. For some reason, when Vosh uses the same rhetoric, we're suddenly like, "Oh man, I don't know. That seems like it's just impossible for this to."
Well, I do think Sondsol. I would respond. There is a difference.
Please, he was talking to me.
Exactly. We do need to acknowledge that there is a huge fucking difference between Tucker Carlson and Vosh. Like, not only
we've already said this like 20 times. Yes. We've already said this 20 times. We don't need to see it again.
I need to fucking clarify that shit. Sorry. I'm not equating these two at all. Vosh with any of those right-wing figures.
It's a matter of scale rather than a matter of what they're doing, though. We could say that they're not the same, but it's simply a scale.
I just want to be clear.
I don't even think it's a matter of scale. It's a matter of the nature and what they're calling for. Like, I think we can all agree that.
I'm not talking about Vosh specifically. No, let me finish this because I know what you're going to say. You're like they're actually calling for worse violence.
I don't mean to be.
I don't.
They're not saying worse violence.
Ginger will get to finish her point. Okay, I promise you. But I am going to actually speak on my goddamn panel, okay? Because I've said less than all of you, okay? I've said less than all of you. And let me be clear. right?
You're the
Yes,
moderator.
it
You
is
should be
about-
talking less than all of
Shut
us.
up! Shut up! Shut up! Okay. What I want to say here is that if I'm not talking about Vaush or anyone in specific, but if you listen to left-wing rhetoric, the extremist rhetoric, I'm not talking the average rhetoric, I'm talking the extremist rhetoric, it is calling for literal violence, death, the rounding up of political enemies, the imprisonment of political enemies. These are things that are talked about, advocated for, joked about. It is a matter of scale. Yes, they don't have as loud of a voice because they don't have institutional power or any kind of funding levels. And so, yes, it is not the same, but the difference is scale rather than type. Ginger will now finish her point. Go ahead.
I actually don't remember what Sondsol said.
Beautiful.
My point was that by Vosh's own definition, or the people that he's referenced, who haven't
now
been
I
named,
remember. Yes, now I remember. Okay, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not saying that it's an impossibility that that's going to happen. There's always the possibility. Humans are involved. That's kind of how I fall in a lot of situations. But I just feel for a side. I would expect more from them, and I guess that's where I'm coming from, and I maybe shouldn't, but I would expect more from the left when they're always saying, they're quick to discuss gun control, they're quick to discuss certain things, and it would surprise me if that were to happen. I'm not saying that it's a
I agree.
that isn't a probability.
I would have agreed with you like 6 months ago, but I've been changed
but again,
in my opinion.
but
Hardcore.
again, what I'm saying is words versus actions. Yes, words do speak volume, but a lot of I see about that kind of stuff is mostly just online and not really acted out like it is on the right. Not saying that it doesn't happen
response.
because I have seen it before, but I'm just not seeing it as immensely. But you're right; it could snowball into that.
Sure.
And there is no reason. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah. So my one sentence response. Oh God. Okay, so my one sentence response would basically be, I would agree with you, but I think one of the reasons for that is that the left wing hasn't been using rhetoric like this until relatively recently, in the past year and a half, 2 years maximum, right? Whereas we've seen a much longer time frame for the right to go through and put these narratives out there and convince people to do things.
Hold on, that's not true. We've had left-wing rhetoric like this for
a long time.
On a larger scale, like
people.
Vosh?
Sorry.
Well,
no,
we can talk about the Black Panthers and Malcolm X.
Stop. Thank you for the 5 gift subs, Stouffer. I recognize that there are more right-wing, like, again, it's a matter of scale. There are more right-wing people who talk like this than there are left. I can grant you that. But even if it was just one left-winger saying these things, I roundly condemn it. Just like I roundly condemn when the right wing does it.
Wait, can I respond?
Yes,
can I say something to that, right? No, I do think there is a difference in nature between these two things. It's not just a difference in scale, it's a difference in nature. Often when these right wingers are calling for advocating for political violence, it's to like infringe and harm upon minorities or vulnerable groups. And but now I'm not necessarily justifying what Vosh is doing, but there's a difference when Vosh is calling for violence in protection of minority groups.
Stop! The left wing, the right wing, always saying they're also protecting themselves. They are also using the language in self-defense to justify what they are doing.
It's his justification. Ripping the faces off 40 people, and there's a child in the corner with a slingshot shooting spitballs, and you're like, yeah, but we should condemn the child.
We should condemn any kind of violent rhetoric, and I condemn all violent rhetorics. Why is this so hard to accept? Why is this a hard pill to swallow?
I'm sorry to do this. I'm sorry to do this, right? I'm sorry to use the Vosh analogy, right? So would you think it's the same thing for the Nazis? No. For the Nazis, the white Germans at the time, like a Nazi party, to advocate violence against the Jewish minority, and for the same thing for a Jewish minority.
Not. Obviously,
right, because there's a difference in the nature. Difference in its nature.
No, there's a difference in what's being done, right? So the reason that the difference there is one is actually in self-defense. One is actually right now at the time being aggressed upon in violent ways, and the only way to stop it, because they lack any other institutional recourse, is violence, and that is base, just like Ukraine.
And
just like Ukraine. Ukraine is absolutely based
Violence is
in
based.
I agree.
bringing
100%,
out,
but I just want to make a point.
right,
real
so
quick,
this-
right, but really, quick,
Wicks
I
is
just want to say
stochastic,
that like the difference that we would point out is again the fact of the matter. When we look at what happened to the Jews in Nazi Germany, right, and you asked me about this at the beginning, at what line would I say that the like political like self-defense is justified, right? The Jews, they were at that almost immediately after the Nazis took control of the entire government. They instituted, I believe they were the Nuremberg laws, but I just started my like deep research into Nazi Germany. So I think it was the Nuremberg laws that took away like Jewish citizenship from Germany, that took away their right to work in certain fields, right? They already were in that phase almost immediately after the Nazis took power. We're not at that point now. So in order for us to start talking about the self-defense and the way that Vaush is talking about it as a direct comparison, a one-to-one with Nazi Germany in the way that he does, is that's the problem.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Right? We're nowhere near that point in the States, right? All I was just trying to like illustrate was that there is a difference in its nature between a self-defense, like call for self-defense,
but
like violence and self-defense,
but in the context
and
of
violence.
But in the
But that's
context
what
of the
the white
conversation,
genocide
stop. In the context of the conversation we are having now, we are talking about the right-wing rhetoric now and the left-wing rhetoric now, the things that are actually happening. And yes, difference of scale, absolutely. And yes, I don't think either of these people, either of these groups, neither of them, and I want to be very clear for my chat, neither of them should be stopped from saying what they want to say, but I can absolutely push back against it. Anyway,
And
Kate,
the nature
Stop.
is not different. That's the
Katie.
problem.
yes, I agree
No,
with you.
no. The
who's
nature
Mark
is
then
different.
Katie?
Yeah, so the nature is different because although like the Nazis at the time or like white nationalists or whatever will couch
nationalists,
they will couch their rhetoric in terms of self-defense, like white genocide. We need to protect our white people from being genocided, however culturally, whatever they would argue.
Although the specific way that they would talk about it, because I watched these videos like on stream back in the day, right? The way they would talk about it is like, well, I'm not saying that you should go out and start shooting up brown people. No, I would never say that. What I'm saying is you should start arming yourself for self-defense because eventually the day will come where they will start coming for you, right? The day will come where you need to act in self-defense in defense of your race. That's how they talked about it. They didn't say like just like go out and like protect the homeland because like we're being invaded. Although some of them did say that. A lot of the language is couched in this more, like we need to prepare for the day where we need to enact self-defense.
Right. No, but the point is that what I'm trying to say is those white nationalists will frame it as self-defense, right? But in actuality, when we evaluate it, it's not actually self-defense. What they want to do is they just want to encroach and perpetrate like bad things upon minorities.
What we're talking about is the fact of the matter. You're talking about a fact of the matter. You're saying that they didn't actually have any reason to commit any kind of self-defense action, right? I'm saying we're not at that point either. And you keep on agreeing with me when I say this, but we're not at that point. And neither were the white nationalists, right? This rhetoric is jumping the gun to the point where people might go out and do those things.
Right. But remember, I always agreed that Vosh is going too far with this rhetoric. No, what I'm in response to, this is about Wick saying that there is no difference in nature.
There isn't.
No, wait, hold on. We
No,
can
but I
all
think there
agree.
is.
Wait,
Maybe
hold on.
I'm missing something.
You guys should let his Mark explain his point.
We need to be able to agree that there is a huge difference between self-defending against your race being taken over and self-defending against, people fighting. Like, there's just a difference between a white genocide, feeling like you're white, you're just not going to be the majority anymore, and then feeling like your fellow brothers and sisters will die. I think that there's a little bit of
in the what, like in
terms of
again,
nature.
no, I'm not going to go down this road. Let's just say that everyone thinks they're the hero of their story. Everyone thinks,
I agree,
if
but
you
we
don't
should
do
also
this, we will die. That is the rhetoric being used. We will die. And this is on both sides. It's not just, we won't be the majority anymore, or, we won't have access to healthcare, or, we'll just be oppressed. It's, we will die. That is what is being said on both sides. If the Republicans get in power, they will kill us.
This is not a both sides issue. There's fucking vegans.
What are you
out there
talking?
right
Okay, I'm
now
not
that think we
both
should kill all
siding the
meat
issue.
eaters, too.
I have said
Like, should
over
we
and
have a
over
panel
again
on
what
that?
is infinitely.
The volume
Oh my
of
God.
impact and scale is super relevant here. You can't just hand wave that away. That matters. The context of these things matter.
And
It's
we're
not
trying to
it's
take
not
that
a
into
both sides issue.
consideration.
And if there was a
but
vegan
the-
talking about that we should kill all meat eaters and he had 500,000 subscribers, I'd be on that panel too.
I don't think
but
there's
that-
500,000 people that agree with him. I don't think a follow is indicative of like total ideological alignment for
All
one.
right.
I
mean,
and I
we
would
should
agree with
measure
that,
it then.
There's
but
just
again,
not that
to-
same level of representation down the line here as far as like extremism and the messaging behind it.
Skilltree
I think
Gaming.
we're-
Skilltree
again,
Gaming
I
is
just wanna
giving me
bring up-
$5 to say, can we all agree catastrophizing is bad and we should treat people like adults and be truthful? I hate the ends
Yeah, we
justify the
all
means type of people.
condemn it.
But
Yeah.
Falser. But
I agree.
this is the thing.
Well, not Katie.
Well,
Let Katie
I
speak
wanna
for
say-
herself. Katie, now no, you just
I don't
you
wanna
just made
side.
it so Katie gets to speak now. Katie, go ahead.
There's not a single thing that you understand about my position. I
You're-
actually don't. Shut the fuck up.
You cut me off all the time.
Shut up. Wick, I actually don't want to speak. You've done a terrible job moderating this. This has been super disrespectful. And that's the only other thing I wanted to say. You
Okay.
can continue letting your special guest Sondsol and this new guy who's very confused about how Twitch panels work on running this shit show.
Okay,
I was
Katie,
about to,
the only
like,
thing
it-
I will respond is, Katie, go back and I want you to time your speaking time compared to everyone else, and I want you to report back to me on what you got.
I'll also
Thank
say
you.
I've been on Counterpoint's debate panels. You know, I'm not fully new to this thing. You should watch all of my stuff.
I would
I'm
say
at
me and
Staxiums
Katie have
everywhere.
probably talked pretty similar time. I didn't want to interrupt Katie to tell everyone that she hasn't talked in a while, but if you want to say something, you're more than free to. I've been muting myself because I have been like going off a little bit, but yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you're mostly the one on the other side, besides Staxium. So
Listen, I am the strongest Vosh hater. All right, I'll take the strongest
Mhm.
stance on it. Okay.
I mean, it just makes more sense to have you guys, the two of you, talk the most, considering
Sure.
you know.
before we get into like a whole meta conversation, right? The thing, oh shit, what was it that Falser said just a minute ago? I really wanted to respond to it. What
I
was
was
the
talking
last
about
point
the
you made?
scale of the issues.
The scale of the issues. Yeah. So again, like just to reiterate, I think that everyone here agrees that the scale is significantly weighted on the conservative side and on the far right side to like for the propensity to go out and do these mass shooting events, right? Everyone here agrees with that. And I think now I don't know most of the people on this panel, but I think that most of us talk about those most of the time, right? The most impassioned streams that I've ever had have always been the mass shooting, like immediately after the mass shootings, because it just feels like something could have been done by now to maybe try and mitigate this, but nothing has been done, right? But the thing that I keep bringing up, and I think that Staxiums keeps on bringing up, is the possibility that this does spiral into something that becomes worse. And my worry that if it does become worse, or even if there is, like, if there is one trans mass shooting that mentions the legislation that's been passed in the United States, it will be such a devastating thing for the entire trans community. So my reason for pointing this out, not only because all mass shootings are bad, all violence against innocents is fucking horrible, right? We don't want there to be negative blowback against the very group that we're trying to say is the one
Okay.
being harmed.
So, Sondsol, how do we
Why am I getting
counteract
flipped
it?
off for that?
Look,
What does
Falsers,
counteracting
go
it
ahead.
look like?
Falsers. And I Drink Bleeds from
Not
High Dawn
everything's about
says, let
Katie, I
Katie
don't
cook.
understand.
Okay, I'm letting Katie cook. I've given Katie a lot of leeway here, but Falser. She disagrees, and that's fine. And we'll probably talk
No,
about it.
I just have a question for
Go ahead,
Sondsol. So when
Falser.
you say like we need to come on and like counteract these things, what does that look like? Because everything I've heard so far leads me to believe what that looks like is us collectively condemning it.
I
Is
think
that
that
fair?
they're collectively condemning it and calling it for what it is, which is like blatantly lying to an audience and fear mongering. Like that's the really, really bad thing that can lead people, especially people who are already like predisposed to, some sort of like violent action, whether they have like some sort of mental illness that makes them see the world in a different way or something like that, to go out and do these things, right? Because Vosh doesn't have control over every single individual mind in his audience, right? He doesn't know who's consuming his content. And so I think even he would agree that people who have a platform, especially the larger the platform becomes, they have a responsibility to craft their rhetoric in a way that is responsible,
Yeah.
right?
Here's what's interesting to me is I think collectively, not unanimously, apparently, which was news to me halfway through, but collectively, we have condemned it. And I understand that it is not a popular thing for me to come onto a Twitch panel and criticize the topic of it. I understand that doesn't play well to the crowd, that doesn't play well to the panelists.
It happens all the time, to be clear, but go ahead. You're not, this
Yeah,
isn't unique,
it
but
doesn't play
carry
well
on.
to the host. I understand that. But I want you all to understand that my position is because we have pretty quickly reached a collective condemnation of this, and I think most people in most circles would, is that the conversation becomes harmful after a certain threshold of focus because it's not going anywhere. Like there's nothing else we can do. We agreed on the condemnation, and I think it was an easy point to get to. And so it's like, well, let's refocus that conversation. And there's an indictment in there that I want to be clear on. I'm not trying to be passive aggressive. I want to be really clear with my indictment. And my indictment is that you bringing focus to this issue that is not worthy of focus is directly counterintuitive to your cause.
Can I ask a question then? At what point would you say it is justifiable to talk about negative or violent rhetoric on the left? Because using the arguments for people who think that there is a transgenocide, like, is it after people have already died? Is it after people have already been radicalized? At what point is it reasonable to talk about these things?
I'm happy to
I
answer
would
that.
say
So the first thing I would like to do is draw a distinction between talking about something and focusing on it, right? When you predicate a panel upon a specific thing, you have focused upon it. We are not talking about it, we are focusing on it, right? And that lends a degree of weight to that conversation. There's an implication that it's worthy of being focused on, and there's messaging behind that. And so I think what you mean by your question is, when is the point in which we should focus on these issues? And my answer to that would be when there is substantial enough evidence to support the fact that it is a larger issue at hand in the demographic. And I don't think we're there. Again, we're at 1% of mass shootings.
Well, but again, if we need more mass shootings to create data points for us to say that this rhetoric is causing these things, then we're no longer doing it preemptively.
Well, but we're back
doing
to
it
square
after.
one. So the answer is we condemn it, and we did that.
So
I would
what
say that the purpose
Let's
would be to
stack
try and
Samson
get
here.
people. Yeah. I just want to say, I would say that like the point would be not only to like condemn it, but to like bully people who are using that.
We're not bullying Vaush. Vaush isn't here. Vaush doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
Vaush's
because he's too much of a
opening
fucking
statement was like
coward to do
tribal.
anything.
we
like,
don't need
argue with
any of
people
that.
who disagree with him.
Staxiums, go
But,
ahead.
Like, you
Stop!
wanna nip it in the bud.
You've gotten a
That
lot
was
of
it.
time, Staxiums.
Yeah,
go
that was
ahead.
it.
Okay. Yeah. So I totally hear your criticism, Falsers. I get it. What I would say is something that I'm conscious about a lot is who I am talking to. Like if I'm in a room full of conservatives, my go-to thing that I'm going to be talking about anytime anyone mentions is the trans shooter, which I'm in a pretty conservative state. I have a lot of conservative coworkers, a lot of conservative family, a lot of conservative friends. The first thing I say is that they are overwhelmingly pacifist. I start mentioning this, and anytime someone might, which they never have, but if anyone would have brought up Vosh rhetoric, I'm like, that's not indicative of the culture. That doesn't matter. But I need to be aware of who I'm talking to with my content and who people are watching this, and say that this is going to be an overwhelmingly left-wing population, and we need to talk to that population and say, how best can we approach this? And the approach isn't self-defense. The approach is conversation, because we live in a democracy. And I think I want to focus on that. I want to say, hey, instead of engaging in this violent rhetoric and this genocide rhetoric, understand, hey, conservatives don't understand where we're coming from, but they seem to be protecting children. Are they lying? Maybe we should talk to them. Maybe we should have these conversations, open up that dialogue, because I think that's the best foot forward. That's what I want to focus
and then
on.
make some space for Katie. Is that okay? Because I see their hand up, but I do want to respond very quickly. I generally agree with what you're saying, but I don't think the way to combat a side that is, again, really rife with demagoguery is by being a demagogue ourselves. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think the way to combat those things is with evidentiary arguments grounded in firm realities. And I think we can look at larger pieces of data and evidence and truth and multiple layers of those metrics and start to bring them together to tell a unified narrative, which is very clear in this nation.
Okay. Katie,
and I think that is far more effective.
Katie, you have the floor.
Yeah, so Vosh isn't here to bully. So I agree with Folsers on that. If Wick has been reading chat, and he has a few mods that has been reading his chat, and I'm fine being called a radical extremist. So if we can agree, then most of this panel agrees in their total condemnation of everything Vosh has ever said regarding this rhetoric. And if Wick could tell us that his chat generally thinks that Vosh's genocidal rhetoric is pretty out of pocket, can we then move on to talk about anything that actually has material impacts on, like, reality?
The material impact on reality I'm going to address right now is the $5 Trib gave me to say possible to focus on more than one thing at a time. Why it's a focus is because there's an interest. Address it. The pearl clutching is weak AF and GL. Okay, but yes, we are absolutely, it is up to the panel what they want to talk about. So if the panel wants to discuss solutions, I am more than happy to do so. Katie, please, what is the solution? You want to talk about solutions? Give us some solutions.
Solution to what?
Okay, you said you wanted to talk about material things. Go ahead. I'm giving you the floor. Give us something. Give us a prompt. Give us something, please.
Yeah, falsers. Give them a prompt. Go.
Yeah, I'm happy to give you a solution. It's gun regulation. It's gun regulation. That's it. And we see it. We see it. There's plenty of evidence for it. There's plenty of data for it. And the right wing would love to gaslight you away from. And I'm sure I'm going to get all kinds of hate from right wingers in chat.
Let me ask you, Francis.
Because the evidence shows that it works. In Australia, in 1996, they passed something called the NFA, which required Australians to turn in their long arms in mass. It required much stricter licensing. And they saw one of the sharpest drops in gun violence immediately.
That's not true. That's not true. No. This is factually inaccurate. Stop. Nope. This is factually inaccurate. What they did was they redefined what that looked like. And so the metrics, because they redefined it, changed. But the actual amounts of shootings did not.
That's not accurate.
So that is you are not true. Shootings, that is not true.
Of mass shootings, which is specifically where you
yes, because they changed the definition of mass shooting. They changed it. They changed it. Oh my God!
Hold on. Prior to 1996, Australia ran almost line to line with the USA. They were side by side, despite having only about 8% of our population. They were about 80% of our total mass shootings. The moment they passed that gun control law, those mass shootings dropped. And you are correct in saying that there is a lens that is looked through, but you are incorrect with an implication that that is unfair. Because when we use that exact same lens to compare it side by side with the USA, the results become demonstrable. And it is not just limited to Australia. There are multiple other countries where you see this working. Canada, right beside us, has stricter gun control than us, and they have less than 1/8 our rate of gun violence.
So Moodit for $5 says falsers. This is Moodit, not me. Falsers is a white man, wouldn't know, but Asian hate crime is a big problem in Australia, regardless of gun control. But
Asian hate crime is not the same metric as gun
mass murders. Yeah,
100%. We're to draw conclusions from data.
We're talking about mass murders. We're obviously we can agree that discrimination is everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, we all agree, right? Okay.
Exactly. That is.
I guess if we're going to move to
I
this
love that.
topic,
I love that comment because I open that by saying when I talk about this, the right wing will try to gaslight you to another issue, and I appreciate the chatter with demonstrating what that looks like.
I have a question for falsers. I have a question for falsers.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just curious, right? If there was a bunch of conservatives, right, on a panel talking about potentially harmful rhetoric on the right, just as we are now, how would you feel if a conservative came on the panel and were like, okay, wait, hold on, let's kind of like shut this conversation down. Let's not actually talk about the ideals and the values that we have going on. Yeah, we kind of agree that's bad. Let's talk about gun violence, about those laws. How would you feel about that?
I would like that. I would love to have a conversation about practical applications. However, I think the crux of your question is, would I have the same level of passion from that side,
Sure.
from this side? And the answer,
On the gun control
candidly,
thing.
is no. And
Sure.
it goes back to my point about
Yeah, I got
scale,
you.
because Vosh is not Donald Trump, right? Like, where I don't understand this false equating, because where was the right having a problem with stochastic terrorism when fucking 𝕾𝖎𝖎 mailed 16 pipe bombs to Democrats and then specifically said he looked at Trump like a surrogate father? Where was the outrage about stochastic terrorism when they had the 2019 El Paso shooter that specifically cited Donald Trump's views on immigration
talking
as
about-
a reason to
We've
murder?
been talking about
26
this for years.
Where was the outrage from the right when Donald
What?
Trump specifically
right,
said in
Wick.
2016
Oh, from the right.
there
Okay.
has to be retribution and that we should not be weak in how we do so? They don't give a damn about stochastic terrorism. It's not in their point of view beyond the utility of gaslighting from gun control.
On
agree
the
with that.
topic of gun control, though, first of all, Mood It for $5 more says the point was that violence became more targeted rather than mass shootings, but apparently we are okay not considering that aspect. You don't have to address it if you don't want to, but
I have a question for him.
First, okay, yes,
Yeah,
I'm not the moderator, but I do have a question for him too on gun control. But ask.
Yeah, I have opinions on gun control. I find it really hard to find practical solutions in the United States. I think that the difference between like the gun buyback in Australia back in the 90s and the situation in America is there are so many more fucking guns here, and people are very unwilling. Like there's a significant difference of culture in Australia versus the United States around guns, where people are not as willing to give those things up, right? So in order for us to actually, round up all the guns, the mandatory gun buybacks, it seems like it would be almost impossible to get rid of even a good percentage of the guns. Now,
Yeah, but I
I'm
think-
100% in favor of the voluntary gun buybacks, which has had some positive effect in cities like I live in Houston, right, where there was a voluntary one, and people who had illegal guns could go, no questions asked. If they needed some cash, they could trade that gun in
You
for
shouldn't find
cash.
issues with practical solutions here. Is my screen seen? Can you guys see my screen?
We can see you.
We
yeah.
can't see your background. Your background's fuzzy.
Not my background. I'm doing a screen share right.
Yeah,
Oh, no, that's
Can
probably
you
not
enable
gonna...
that, Wick? Is that possible or not? If it's not, it's okay.
I will fuck
Totally
it up
fine,
and
totally fine.
yeah, I'm sorry.
So I'll just I'm happy to link this to you, and there are multiple sources that support this across multiple lenses. So the reality is, when you talk about like the applications, I understand you're talking about the context of the United States. And I agree that because it's so culturally ingrained and mechanically ingrained in terms of the quantity of guns in our country, that really creates a complexity in the issue. But we still see drastic and clear correlations between stronger gun regulation laws and gun deaths. You have California, which is one of the biggest states, has some of the strongest laws, and they're among the best in terms of per capita gun violence. In fact, you can laugh all you want.
I'm laughing at chat.
Hold on. One of the best in the country is Massachusetts, and their gun violence rate in terms of deaths per capita is something like 12 times lower than the states where the gun regulation lightens up. And by the way, those states, for anyone who's wondering, they're almost all in the Southeast along the Bible Belt, where the Republicans control those legislatures, okay? They don't give a damn about gun regulation, and it's showing in their crime statistics as these places get destroyed by gun violence. And people love to point to the cities and say, well, it's an issue over there, and those are Democrat controlled. That's great, except for the fact that rural gun violence is on the rise and now runs a straight line with urban gun violence in terms of per capita.
May I ask a question?
There are just a number of points that.
Sure.
that
I have
really
a question
draw
for you,
clear
falsers. I have a question for you, falsers.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
from the decade of the 1970s, from 1970 to 1980, we
Sure.
had very similar amounts of gun ownership in America. Very similar levels. This slightly changed come to federal. I'm talking federal level of gun
Not
control
entirely
laws.
accurate, but go on.
I mean, there are absolutely differences. But my question
There's
is,
big differences that are meaningful.
well, then you can answer that and correct me in the answer to my question.
Sure.
So during the 1970 to 1980, right, there was about 19 school shootings, something like that. I don't have the exact stats, but it's significantly less, right? What do you contribute, right, to the massive rise in gun violence in mass shooting specifically in the last 10 years?
Well, there's a number of contributing factors. So I want to address the first one because it's relevant to gun ownership. When we
Please.
look at ownership of a firearm, that is not an equal thing. If you have 20 people with handguns and 20 people with assault rifles, those 20 with assault rifles are capable of inflicting far more harm. Okay. We saw access to some of these weapons start to elevate. And then there was regulation put in place that tried to restrict that. But it doesn't really work because what it restricted was automatic weapons. But high capacity weapons are still things that we can acquire. And whether or not that weapon is automatic or semi-automatic, the harm, trying to think of the word, potential outcome for harm.
Potentiality, yes.
Yeah, potentiality. That's it. Is still very large. And that has increased with gun ownership. So in terms of culturally, I think one of the biggest things that we would be crazy not to consider is the internet, right? So now we have this mechanism that really can start to socialize extremists and gives them a safe place to call home, which kind of goes back to our conversation here, I'll admit, before somebody points it out. But again, we aren't seeing these bubbles on the left cause large-scale violence. We are on the right.
Okay.
it's just a
So
different
I
conversation.
know I want to respect everyone's time, and I want to give everyone here some closing statements. I do want to continue this conversation, so if you want to stay, you are welcome to stay. And if you've been in chat and you want to yell at me or anyone else on this panel, jump into the backstage waiting room, and we will continue this conversation for an hour, maybe two. But I want to respect everyone's time, and if you need to go, I totally get it. I totally understand. We're going to start with closing statements with Ginger because I know she needs to go first. Go ahead, Ginger.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I kind of I'm a woman of few words, all right? So I feel like I said my statement during the panel. So thank you for having me. I am Ginger Rameth. You can find me at twitch.tv/Ginger Rameth with 2 R's in the middle. Again, thanks so much, guys.
Hey, go check her out, gang. She's pretty awesome, and thank you
And
for
thanks,
coming.
panelists.
Yes.
Bye, guys.
𝕬🎧, please.
Hi, yeah. Thanks for having me on, Wick. I think we all agree that from like a consequentialist perspective, Vosh's rhetoric is harmful to the trans movement, to the United States as a whole. I do think it's worth pointing out, though, that I know we disagreed about this, Wick, and maybe we can talk about it later, that there is a difference in nature between violence in self-defense and violence when you want to like harm.
I don't disagree with that. I'm okay, but go on.
We didn't get time to finish the conversation, but we have fun to have it. I couldn't really contribute to the gun control situation because I'm a Brit and I don't know dick all about that. It's been fun, guys.
𝕬🎧, always a pleasure. Go and check him out. He has a YouTube channel. You can go find him out, and he has some pretty interesting videos up there. You can check him out on it. Stochastic, please.
My name's Stochastic. I'm mostly on TikTok. You can follow me on Twitter as well. I didn't really contribute to the gun debate because I wasn't really set up for that. But Vosh has said some pretty insane things, and we should criticize that when we can.
Okay. Thank you for being here. I'll have you on again. I think you were
an
interesting interlocutor. 𝕬🎧, please.
Yeah, no socials. I'm not a content creator, so no need
Wick
to
exclusive, but go on.
Yeah, I'm a Wick exclusive. That's exactly right. Again, I'll restate. I know my position on this panel is not a popular one for the crowd, the panel, or the host. I know that coming on and taking issue with the premise of the panel is not a super easy thing to do. But the question was asked to me earlier, then why are you here? And I'm here to advocate for practical applications and practical conversations that further outcomes that help us in a gun violence epidemic.
Thank you, Ginger Rameth, for the raid of 9 new souls. So thank you for coming, and thank you for your position. 𝕬🎧 is a wonderful member of my community. He's great. I don't take an issue with him taking an issue with me. I am pretty low-key. You can criticize me on the panel. You can criticize me in general, and that's okay. We'll still be friends. And 𝕬🎧, you're a great guy.
I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. Katie, please.
Yeah, 𝕬🎧's opinion not being popular on this panel or in chat is, what's wrong with Americans? That was the conversation was supposed to be about. the fact that Americans are unprepared to talk about gun regulation when that's the only thing that's going to save American lives is sad and bad. Vosh is awful, the worst, human being to ever exist. Absolute trash, garbage. He is a racist and a pedophile and a horrible human being. If in Minecraft, he would get the wall. Very, very bad, very all bad. Wick, that was really shitty moderation. I'm really mad at you, but we'll talk about that privately.
Okay.
Falsers, I really hope that this will continue, because I think the conversation that you are trying to have is the most valuable thing that could have ever came out of this panel. And it's really frustrating that people find that boring and uninteresting. And I'm sorry people care about drama more than saving human lives, but that's how it is.
Where can people find you?
In my Twitch channel, @Katie, DAT KATEE.
Okay. Speaking of horrible and things like that, Sondsol, please.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. This panel went a lot of places. To briefly touch on the last topic, I don't necessarily disagree with what Falser said. I just worry about like the actual possibility of something like that happening in the United States, both because of political will and practicality. I'm very open to all sorts of different policies when it comes to gun control. I think that in the US, guns are going to be here long term. It's not going to be in my lifetime that we get rid of, gun ownership. So I don't think that that's even worth talking about. I'm more worried about like the practical applications. In regards to the rest of the panel, I feel like I was able to get my point across pretty well. I don't know why there were so many disconnects where it felt like we were continually agreeing and then disagreeing, but maybe in the post panel we'll figure that out.
Maybe. Where can people find you?
You can't find me on Twitter anymore until I get unbanned, hopefully. But
Did you just get banned?
I got banned like 2 or 3 days ago. You know what? And I'll even say I lost my cool a little bit. I probably deserved it a little bit.
What did you do?
I said something that I
No. Okay, no. What are you doing?
That to you, Wick. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube or on Twitch or increasingly on Kick. Sondsol, SONDSOL. Like to argue with people a lot, and I have strong opinions on. I think I've become a complete anti-socialist now, as opposed to just being, okay with some of them. I think I'm just like completely against all socialists, like ideologically. I think I've been poisoned. So.
Okay. Well, gang, check them out if you'd like. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate you. Please do that. If you're following this on Twitch and you haven't followed me yet, hit that follow button. If you think I've done a terrible job or a great job, let me know, please. Both in chats, both in bits, both in super chats, or if you just want to DM me and yell at me, either on Twitter or on Discord, you're more than welcome to. If you want to talk about this subject now, what you do is you hit that Discord link, okay? You hit that Discord link, which I'll be providing in the YouTube chat and the Twitch chat. You come on, I'll pull you in, and we'll talk about it, okay? And you think my moderation was bad in the closed. Oh, just wait till you see how much I'm not going to moderate in the open. It's going to be a grand time, gang. Monday, 6
I'll
p.m.
be back in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I understand. Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be talking about whether or not Biden should withhold federal funds to states that pass anti-trans legislation. That's going to be a fun discussion.
Oh, fuck.
Yes.
I so want to be on that one. That's
maybe if you pay me enough. Oh, no, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm kidding. No, don't start that rumor. But yeah, with that, let's open it up and let's see.
Did you not get my check?
I got a bounce, Wick.
Yeah, it was Mark. Always a pleasure. We'll see you later,
guys.
buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to shill. Give me 2.
Okay. So everyone pretty much
I'll
is,
hang out.
Yeah, silling and
I'm going to be here.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think, gang? Parallax and who is this? Zephyr Hash. Hello. If you got cameras, turn them on for me.
You know I am, baby. You know I'll let you see me. All right. First of all, 𝕊𝖎, if you can hear me, come back for a moment, please. I'm gonna give 𝕬𝖎 just a moment. Other fella, introduce yourself, Zephyr. Say hi. What are you here for?
Hey man, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, I
All
was
right, I'm back.
hoping to talk with Falsers. Mudit, I'm the guy who brought up that Australia point, and yeah, I think first of all, I'm sorry for bringing that race rhetoric into it. That was not helpful. But yeah, I guess if he was here, probably it'd be more fruitful. But I can still get maybe Sondsol and Staxium's points on it. Asian hate crime in Australia apparently has not gone down with gun control laws in Australia. So I guess my only problem is not against the Second Amendment. I think there's arguments to be made against for gun regulation and against the Second Amendment and whatnot. My problem is when Australia is used as an example, as a metric to bring about the change, or to bring about, to be used as leverage in the gun control discussion. So yeah, I guess what would be your takes on it? Is it okay for gun control to be introduced even though the absolute number of crimes and hate crimes goes up?
Sondsol, just so you know, that was a reference to what you were saying about Australian guns. It was kind of directed towards you, even though you weren't here for it.
Falsers,
here,
Falsers.
so yeah, it was.
Yeah, he meant
I
falsers.
just got
Yeah.
back. I missed.
Oh, sorry, Falsers. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting you guys.
Can you guys catch me up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quick, when it comes to like absolute numbers, I don't know like how many more people there are in Australia now versus when the gun buybacks happened. So like that's also going to like take I don't know why we wouldn't do it per capita as opposed to absolute numbers. But,
I'm sorry. I meant I used absolute incorrectly here. By absolute, I meant that per capita crime is increasing absolutely. Something
Okay,
to that
yeah.
We're not
effect.
talking about crime, though. We're talking about gun violence specifically and murder rates, right? So, and firearms are a key component in this when we're looking at the data, because that's what we're trying to control is firearm violence. And it sounds a bit like some of the arguments that you'll hear sometimes. Well, look at the UK with knife violence, but like even the realities on that get a little murky because the US actually has higher rates of knife violence right now than the UK does. But I want to engage with your specific point, which is that in terms of Australia, when you look at the per capita, that somehow that might be better. And you're wrong. It's actually worse, because up until 1996, the absolute was close to the US in terms of like raw number of mass shooting incidents, the absolute. And they were 8% of our population at that time. And so per capita, that's actually far higher. And now it's virtually non-existent. Australia's not having a bunch of mass shootings. You just don't.
I'm only talking
I just
about
want to
gun
acknowledge.
control
towards
works.
Asian. I'm talking about targeted Asian hate crime towards Asians.
That is a
That's-
separate issue. That's not what we're discussing. That's not what anyone has espoused a position about. So I'm not here to talk about how Australians' gun laws have stopped hate crimes against Asians or not. What I'm here to talk about is rates of violence as a result of a firearm in Australia, and they have plummeted since the NFP was passed.
But again, they changed the definition of mass shootings to have a
Can I
higher
see your
bar.
source? Wick?
Right.
I'm just curious
When we
about that.
unify that
Okay.
definition, they
Still
still
remains.
Because the
After
definition for
the
mass
panel-
shootings has always been 4 or more.
Not in
As far as
Australia,
I'm
they
aware.
changed it. In Australia, they changed it.
I would love to
specifically.
see a source.
I
on
will.
that,
I
and
will
I'll-
get it to
I'll
you
shut up
after the
if that's
panel.
the
I will
case.
get it to you after the panel. I have
Sure.
to deal with
I wanna say
chat
2
moderation, things like that. Go
No,
ahead.
no, totally. Wick, you're good. 2 things that I want to say. First, there's a reason why we're kind of a little fuzzy on the facts here, and that's because the Dickey Amendment prevents the CDC from even investigating this fucking thing. We can't really run comprehensive data on these gun shootings because the NRA has fucking restricted every single attempt that we've done to even attempt to investigate this issue. Second is that anytime we look at sort of state laws and determine which states have less gun violence versus which state, we need to acknowledge the fact that it's incredibly easy to transport weapons over state lines and incredibly hard over federal lines. That needs to be acknowledged. So, like, anytime we say, "Oh, well, California has really bad guns," yeah, but where did they come from? Where did all of these guns originate from? And maybe if we start siphoning those and making sure that it's restricted at those points of entry, that guns will stop being as prevalent as they are right now. But this is a complicated issue because America is pretty unique, but that I just wanted to get those 2 points across.
For example, in the state of Indiana, a resident of any neighboring state can buy a long rifle, which means you can take that rifle back to Chicago or to Illinois specifically, rather.
Yeah, and I'm sure we've all
which We all know that school shootings are disproportionately committed with rifles, not pistols, and therefore the Illinois gun sales can be directly attributed, or the Indiana gun sales can be directly attributed to it.
I agree
I've got
with
another
this.
panel to get ready for, so I'm going to make it super quick here. Sondsol, the legend of Sondsol. I've never met you. I usually hear you referred to as Soy Soul. You weren't that soy tonight, but you did pull off an amazing feat. I've never seen anybody talk more than Katie and have less to say than the moderator. Falsers, every time you open your mouth, it was like truth just came out. I love it. You're doing your thing. Saxiums, I don't know, man. You were like back and forth. It was a good time. Wick, I really came to say this. You did just fine moderating.
I know.
You did just fine.
I know.
Sondsol just so happens to be the only man I've ever met that can out-talk Katie. He fucking outpaced her.
Well, do you have an actual fucking argument against anything that I've said, or are you just going to say
He just had
things?
more wind. He just had more. No, I'm just kind of saying things. He just had more wind. It was amazing. And
I met a lot of
I gotta
people
be
who talk
honest.
about
I
this
gotta
that
be
have the
honest.
same
If,
opinion as you and the same attitude.
I kind of lost track of.
Mark Falsers, but baby,
I kind of
wanna
lost
hang out
track
later
of
tonight, a little one-on-one, maybe some.
shit.
You know what I mean? Little one-on-one time.
Okay, enough flirting. Thank you
Okay,
for
just,
coming.
okay,
motherfuckers.
Get him out of there.
Zephyr, please.
Yeah. So first of all, falsers, again, I wanted to apologize. I did not mean to bring race into it, and I think there's still a discussion to be had. I think there is a bit sort of gray area between mass shootings and hate crimes and murders, and I think just separating them out absolutely probably is a discussion to be had maybe some other time. And yeah, Sondsol, liked your positions, but I kind of lost track after the 16th second of continuous talking, so maybe that can be helped for future reference. But again, I largely agree with the Orange Saxian's positions on this particular debate.
Sure,
again,
I think one of the problems is that I have to overqualify everything that I say because in my experience in talking about this subject, people will take one little snippet of something that I say without any qualifications on it or qualifiers on it, and they'll like spin me into like this like actual genocidal or genocide denying virulent transphobe who wants to curb stomp every FTM that I come across. Like I don't know, so probably something I could work on, but I have to like add so much.
I wanna give some of the other people a chance here that have jumped in, because I know F-Bombs wanted to speak, and I know Debate Board wants to speak too. So I want to give them the chance to have thoughts, and I know F-Bombs has thoughts. So go ahead
and let Debate Board go. Let him go.
Okay, Debate Board first.
Well, I don't have any thoughts. You already know this, Wick. But I appreciate the generous observation there. You guys are talking about gun control. I was coming in to talk about this fake stochastic terrorism nonsense and the one-way street it is
that's
for
perfectly
for
okay
leftists.
to do. Yes.
Well,
Go
fine,
ahead.
we'll
if
jump
you would like.
topics. Yeah, then we'll jump topics. And this stochastic terrorism concept is simply an invention of the left that provides them cover, since they can't get away with calling people they disagree with as Nazis and fascists, right? They now call them terrorists. But since they don't want to undermine what terrorism really is, they want to smear people as stochastic terrorists on the premise that some probability that they will never quantify or be able to determine is changed in the commission of violence. It's a really weird thing that they've decided to step out on here.
What does stochastic terrorist mean to you?
Nothing, because it doesn't exist. I know the definition
so
in a dictionary, but it doesn't mean anything because you can't measure it, and there is no model to determine it. It's just simply a one-way street to smear people as terrorists.
What's the definition by your understanding?
I'm look, just to clarify, we've had this discussion with President Sunday, and there's a few others. There's a panel a while ago. My contention on stochastic terrorism, for all those who want to understand it, is that stochastic terrorism is largely a meaningless term because it can be applied as definitionally to almost any type of rhetoric that shines a light on something. So,
Wick,
for
I wish
example,
you would let the guy answer that made the claim, though.
Sure, I will, but I was asked by F-Bombs, and I want to answer F-Bombs. So much like when Enron, they reported on Enron and what the financial advisors and the head people in Enron did, they got an increase in negative interaction. They got an increase in the death threats towards them. They got an increase into the threats towards them because, of course, they did, because more people were talking about them. That just happens in any situation where you shine a light on something, and we call that stochastic terrorism when we don't like it, and we call it journalism when we do. Go ahead, debate board.
Fortunately, there was not a definition in there, and I'm glad, because I didn't want you to give this guy an out. Debate board.
There is
What
no
is your
out.
definition of stochastic terrorism? Now that you've had time to Google it too, I guess you're not as on the spot, so it should be easier.
I mean, if you want to continue poisoning the well with your nonsense, you go right ahead, false.
What is the
Stochastic
definition of
terrorism?
stochastic
It
terrorism?
doesn't exist. The definition
I didn't
wants to
ask you your
pretend.
opinion on its existence. I
Oh my
asked you the
goodness, I was
definition.
just going to tell you something, but you can't
Please
shut
do.
up for a
Please
second.
tell me
You're
the
as bad as
definition.
Katie. Oh my goodness.
What's the definition
Um,
of stochastic terrorism?
I don't know what the definition of it is.
I can
I'll
tell
give you the.
because
I'll
you
give you the.
contradicted yourself when you talked about it. When you
No,
talk about,
because
hey,
you asked me for
can't
my impression
quantify it,
of it.
it's
I'm
literally
trying to tell you my impression of it. You
stochastic
can't
terrorism
actually
means.
control yourself.
It talks about
You're like a
variables
13-year-old
that
who
can
can't stop
exist as a
masturbating,
result of
falsers.
things like rhetoric that can have meaningful impacts upon outcomes.
Meaningful
And it
impacts that are
absolutely
statistically
qualifies. You
probable, but we
might not
can't
like
actually
the wording
figure
of
out what
it,
that
but that's
probability
not like
is.
a position on the
Okay,
value.
I think I have a question that debate board would be more able to answer. Debate board.
This is
what
hysterical.
would you? Yeah, because when it comes to stochastic terrorism, it could be a nebulous term, and it
Literally,
can be
it's
like
meaningless.
Every
I don't know.
category is meaningless. I don't know what to tell you. Every label, every category is going to have some of these like vague terms that you're like, oh, I don't
This
know if
isn't
that really
vague.
applies
But
that much.
the question I
Like-
would ask is, what would you call, like in this entire panel that we've had, what would you call the rhetoric that Vosh uses that like could have the implication of like implying like, hey, wink wink nudge nudge, hey, maybe this is something that you guys should go out and do, right? Or maybe like other like right.
Can you use a more extreme example for debate board? Like
if you
how
want
would you
This is
how would you
easy.
feel?
So,
No,
Sondsol,
that
thank
was
you. I
the
appreciate
perfect
the
example. Thank
So
you.
the example is a good one because it's much like Chuck Schumer telling his followers to go out and
No.
harass
He
and
asked you about
intimidate
Vaush, not Schumer.
Republicans. But
He asked you
Vaush
about
is in.
Vaush, not Schumer.
No, he's making
Answer it
Vosh
about
in. Let him
Vaush.
chill.
Vosh is
We would
attempting
have to
to influence
delineate.
people to shoot at others. He is inciting violence. That's
So
what
his
we should
words
call
do
it.
incite violence. His words
mean,
incite
what?
violence, but other people's words don't.
My favorite
say
part
that.
is where
You're
he
saying
said
that.
that stochastic
No, you just
terrorism
said his
isn't
words
vague,
No, I
you just
didn't.
don't
No,
have
I
to
said
define it.
something about
All right,
Vosh. You are now
Yeah, you said
extrapolating.
taking
Vosh
control
is
Okay,
because
weird.
stop.
we can't.
We
Debate
can't.
board.
This
I got
is
a question for
open,
you.
mother. Okay, this is
I'm
open.
chill,
This is
chill.
open.
Wick.
I will
That wasn't a
chill on your
critique. I'm just
mom.
saying
Go
I'm
ahead.
taking over. Fuck you.
Oh, wicked and triggered.
Debate. I got a question for you. Is there anyone that you would say, hey, maybe your rhetoric is leading towards violence?
Yes, of
Would you
course.
agree? Sorry?
No, well, not leading. I would say yes. People can incite violence.
Do you think we should have a word to describe that?
We do. It's called inciting violence.
Okay, no. I
Okay,
just to be
so-
clear,
so, all right,
stochastic
fine.
terrorism
Fuck, well,
definition.
Incitement.
No,
We
this
don't
is
just call it inciting violence.
Okay,
instead of
okay,
terrorism.
okay.
I'm fine with that.
Stochastic
Welcome to
terrorism
definition.
and incitement of violence are two separate concepts. You understand that,
Well, the
correct?
left is trying to make it two separate concepts by pretending that words have some
This-
probabilistic
The definition of
degree to them,
stochastic
and
terrorism.
yet they can't actually
Christ.
definitively model
I can fix this.
or quantify what that
I actually can
probability
fix this.
Go
increase
ahead,
is.
give it a try,
Okay.
F-bombs.
Okay.
And I want to
okay.
go after him.
We need some presuppositions. So, do we agree or do we not agree that there are times that people use words and then somebody hears those words,
Everyone,
and
yes.
translates it into violence? Is that possible? Yes.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes. Okay. Do we agree that there are times that people can intentionally or unintentionally say words, somebody hears those words, and then uses those words as some sort of justification or motivation to commit violence?
Short of a direct instruction or order to do something, no. No,
So-
because again, you are
Fucking-
removing individual agency and responsibility for
I
action.
swear to God,
Okay, wait,
you
wait.
autistic
Not what it
motherfucker.
means.
Hold on,
Like,
wait.
it's
It
so
talks about
hold on,
statistical
stop.
language
probability.
only
Wow,
matters if
Please,
you
just
say
let me
it
do
in
this.
English to say to
Literally
another
does not
person.
address the agency in
Just
that capacity.
wait. I'm just wait. Okay. So based on what you said, there is no rhetoric that Vosh can do in a stream that could possibly lead to violence.
Unless he commanded them, is what debate bro is.
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. No, I don't.
Okay, I
It's
think like the
again, this concept of stochastic terrorism exists merely as a cudgel, as a tool for lefties and progressives to smear people when they don't like the ideas that they are voicing or expressing. That is it. We know that is it because of this probability mechanic that resides in this concept. A probability that there is no model to actually quantify, and there is
Okay.
no factors
Yeah.
driving that
You
probability.
and I are in the same, okay, you and I are basically in the same place. Here's the way I would put it. For every 1,000 people that you speak to, there's a likelihood that one or two could either have a predilection to violence or could get into a mental frame in which they commit violence. And something that person of 1,000 heard could be part of a catalyst that fits into a system that led to
Sure.
the violence.
Let
they
me
created.
try it. Let me
Man,
try
all
another
those
example, please.
propositions.
Let me try another example,
Holy
please.
shit.
Just
Okay.
if I tell 1,000 people or 141 in YouTube and
go
135 in Twitch
I'd
to
love
give
to
me
go after
subs,
Sondsol.
to give me subs,
because
there's
he's
a portion.
talking about
Stop! I'm trying to make money. Okay, so a portion of them will give me money. A portion of them will give me subs. A portion less loyal won't, but the portion who is loyal, who has a predilection to liking my content, will absolutely super chat at me, will absolutely give me subs, will absolutely give me bits. That's okay. Sondsol, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I've heard like some pretty good arguments against the concept of stochastic terrorism being a thing. I think that what I would call stochastic terrorism is like there's like a delineation between like in the same way we would say that systemic oppression, right? Like the state doing something that is oppressive to a specific group is different than genocide. They're along the same lines, right? But one is obviously a much grander level, right? I would say that like an incitement to violence and a stochastic terrorist or the stochastic rhetoric would be like different levels of these things that might have like some fuzziness around the edges, right? But like just like coming off the top of my head to try and like bridge whatever this stupid fucking gap is. That's like the first thing that I can think of. I could be pushed off of that, but what do y'all think of that?
I'm really focused. I'm sorry. My entire brain rotted when 𝕵𝖎𝖎 said that people are free agents, and that's all I've been focusing on for the last little bit.
Right, because who would imagine that there's individual responsibility? That's funny.
I kind of stopped when he said we can't model this thing because there's a very clear observation we can make that around the time Donald Trump rose to prominence, right-wing extremism and occurrences of right-wing violence exploded. They more than doubled in
exploded.
And yeah, that's an explosion.
We're talking like
They
50
more than
events
doubled.
at most.
And just like stochastic terrorism, you may not like the word, but it still exists whether you like it to or not.
This is so fucking. I'm losing my mind. Do we like the breadth of sociology and psychology?
You can complain about it, but it's fucking entertaining.
Stop. Let's stack these, Joe. Hey, stop. Everyone, I'm trying to. I'm gonna have to establish some order. I'm gonna have to.
It puts you in a place where both your arguments contradict, and you don't want to do it.
I want to establish some order and say stochastic hype trainism absolutely works because we're in a hype train gang, and it would be a terrible thing. It would be a terrible thing.
I'm taking over. I tried to be polite. I'm just talking over people right now. Okay. The breadth of psychology and sociology makes one thing clear. People are fragile little babies and they'll succumb to social pressure given almost any nudge. You can nudge people into saying things that are factually incorrect, announce violence on another person given the slightest nudge. Poverty is inextricably linked to crime because people will commit crime if they feel like they don't have any other option, if they're socially pressured to do so. And we cannot. I'm not done yet.
Hey, Stacks, I don't care if you're done. I'm interrupting you. So all these followers of Nick Fuentes, when psychology tells us just a little bit of a nudge will compel people to engage in violence. Where are all these Nick Fuentes people engaging in violence? Where's this mass violence that's
right-wing terrorism?
Are you fucking kidding me?
Examples off the top of my head. Are you serious?
Where are all these? Where's this mass event happening?
Christchurch shooting. Wait,
where is this? Where are these mass number of events happening? Because
we can keep going.
He just listed one.
We had in chat earlier, somebody posted a source that 25 to 33 people in each of the last 2 years were victims of domestic terrorism, right? 25 to 33 people
What does
were
one
killed as a
random
result.
person posts
This
in
is
chat
not
have
a
to do with the
mass event.
conversation?
There's nothing
I want
massive going on
everyone
here.
to understand what.
Explicitly
Hold on,
mentioned
just a
the
sec. Hold on,
genocide.
just a second.
There was a shooting in Buffalo, I think, where the
Never
rifle
played
said the
defense.
N-word on it,
That's
and he
not going to do
killed
any
black
good.
people.
He doesn't care about the evidence. Give me
Yes,
just a
yes,
second
we
here,
do.
guys. I want to point out
I
what
mean, there's
happened.
manifestos.
Where does
I want to
that
give
happen?
stop. I know
When we
everyone
brought
wants to take a shot. I
evidence
know
to
everyone wants
the
to take a
conversation.
shot. Let's give
Before-
Falsers a chance here. Falsers, you have the chance. You said you can fix it. Let's fix it, Falsers.
Well, I didn't say I could fix it.
Falsers.
I
I
just
said
I
I
wanted to
could
get it
fix
here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
you're
I'm mixing up the
interrupting me
people with the
after
F names. White people look alike to me. I can't tell the difference. But go
Sorry, you
ahead.
passed the
Falsers.
F-bomb?
That's actually fair. Go ahead. No, you're okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I just want everyone to understand what happened. When we pointed out that right-wing violence, the word I used was exploded because it more than doubled, his response was not to address my claim and talk about why those correlations may exist. His response was to roll his eyes and take issue with the word exploded. That is what gaslighting is. That is an attempt to divert the conversation.
This is
because the
absolutely
evidence
wrong,
tells a
Falsers.
very
You
clear
cannot get away
story.
with this.
Yep.
Stacks
You can backtrack it and try it now that you've been
Stacks
called out for it.
presented an
But we
environment
all
in which
saw
all
what you
people
did.
can be nudged by the slightest influence.
The
And so I
Yes.
asked. Nick
And-
Fuentes has a huge following. Nick Fuentes is
Re-answer. Did you
characterized as
miss that
somebody
too?
who
The-
advocates for violence. And
the
yet,
number
what we
one
don't
threat-
see is a
Right-wing
mass
violence
number
is
The
of
on
number
people
the
one
rise.
being
threat to
tipped over
America
the
for
edge.
the last
Nick
4
Fuentes
Now
years
deal with that,
in the threat
Falsers.
assessment is
Deal with that,
right-wing
Falsers.
violence.
But that's
Deal with that,
that's the
Falsers.
thing that was brought
Threat
up in this
in the
entire
threat
panel
assessment.
debate, Bohr. That's the thing that was brought up in this entire debate is that my argument was that by Vaush's own definition and the people that he brought up as stochastic terrorists, he would himself be one. Whether or not you agree that stochastic terrorism exists, like, would you at least agree with?
Oh, using your reasoning, yes, I agree with you.
Oh,
Using
okay.
your reasoning, your premise, yeah, you're right.
How about Matt Walsh in the same premise? Would you agree?
No.
By Vaush's definition.
Of course not. Of course not, because it's logical. Yeah. Yeah. The
No, because what we
extermination.
By
saw
Vaush's
here-
definition,
what
he
we
would
saw here
also
was
be
an
one.
attempt-
Yeah.
Just
You're
Vosh,
a
right?
What we
Just
saw here
Vosh.
was an attempt
Got
by
it.
Stacks to suggest that Michael Knowles, by saying he wanted to eradicate the ideology of
He didn't say
transgenderism, wants
ideology.
to
He
kill
said
individuals.
I didn't hear the word
transgender
ideology
from
in there.
society. That's the exact
Not
word.
saying-
Transgenderism
I
is
wanna
an
eradicate
ideology.
operative word to
ideology
change
of
what he
white
said.
Address me.
Is that
He
the
addressed
fucking
me.
same?
He
You're
addressed
so
me.
fucking dumb.
He addressed me. I heard the speech and I quoted him correctly. I did not say eradicate transgender people. I said eradicate transgenderism. And I'm saying enough people will hear that rhetoric and be like, damn, I don't know. Like, I feel like we need to acknowledge that some rhetoric is maybe a little dangerous. And if we can't do that, we're not having a grown-up
Let's
conversation.
bridge that.
Eradicating a
Sondsol.
political
Sondsol.
ideology is not a call
He
to
did not
violence
say
against
ideology.
Eradication is
individuals.
a
He added
strong
that word.
term. Eradication is a strong term,
Okay,
and you
I'm
need to
talking to
acknowledge
him.
that.
So is
Go-
vengeance, but none of you guys are complaining about trans people saying we need a day
Oh,
of
there
vengeance.
you go. You just don't like
I am.
what
Okay,
That's what
there
the
you go.
panel
Oh,
is.
it's-
I went
What are
this
you talking
entire
about?
panel, brother.
How is that
Like,
gaslighting?
What the fuck?
How is
What
that
the
gas-
fuck?
We're talking about someone talking about eradicating.
Engage
a-
with what he
All right,
said.
This
all
is
right.
like I was
No,
literally
just
the
real
conservative
quick.
on the
Just
panel.
really quick.
Sondsol.
This is like nega Katie
Sondsol,
right
let's-
now.
let me
Nega
build a
Katie
bridge
just
we
here.
have one
from the
side
other
here
side,
saying, hey,
right?
eradicating a political ideology is akin to calling
He
for
did not
violence. While
say
we actually have
ideology, you
people
absolute
calling
deaf
for
nutbag. You
physical
are adding that
assault
word. You
of
don't
people.
get to add the word and change the meaning. You're not going
What
to
was
read
his
meaning of
children? What
reality
was his
and then try
child's
to
book
act
about?
like we're all
What
crazy.
is
Falsers,
the
change the meaning of
walrus?
what?
What the
Value.
fuck
Change the
is
meaning
the
of what,
walrus
Falsers?
then?
Ridiculous.
What is the
Change the meaning of
walrus?
what,
Answer
Falsers?
that.
What the
Falsers,
fuck
change
is
the meaning of what?
What
What do
is
you
the
think I'm
walrus?
changing the meaning of?
From Matt Walsh's children's book that is trying to end
Falsers, what do you think I
any
changed the meaning of?
acceptance of trans ideology.
You
Quote,
added the word
unquote.
ideology to what he said, and
What
then
is
you made a number of
what is
assumptions.
transgenderism
Hold on,
if
you
not
asked me
an
a question. I'd love
ideology?
to answer.
Can you quote him
added a
directly,
number of
though?
assumptions on top of that word
What is
ideology that you had
transgenderism
added.
if not
He
ideology, Falsers?
I'm happy to answer if you'll be quiet. He said specifically we need to eradicate transgenderism. And I think the argument you're trying to make is that there's a number of ways to take that statement. And that would be a valid argument. However, that's not how you did it. You tried to add a word that would give it an exclusive meaning. And that is where the slimy thing comes in.
There's
in
only
this whole
one thing that
discussion. And I'm not going
transgenderism
to let you
is.
do that shit because
Did
it's
he say
slimy.
transgender
No,
people?
because I
No.
could so easily
You say
say that
transsexual
transgenderism
people?
is referring
No.
to transgender people. And
transgenderism.
make an argument
argument very
It's
easily.
transgenderism,
And I made it
Marxism,
clear
communism, socialism,
because I'm a fucking
capitalism.
good
You
thing.
have been
Why don't we just
reduced
ask
to
him what
screaming
transgenderism
words.
means? What debate board? What does transgenderism mean?
It's an ideology of transgenderism.
Fucking
That's
shit
it.
show.
Oh, so it's a circular. Is a
Yeah,
circular
just like
definition?
a woman is a woman. Yes. So falsers.
So
So
what is
transgender.
logic?
Wait, hold on,
When
hold
he
on. I
said
want to go down this.
transgenderism.
I want to go down this logic train. So transgenderism
gracious.
is the ideology of transgenderism, which is trans people.
Wow, it got quiet.
No,
Jesus.
Sondsol, what is it that you're trying to ask here?
I'm asking you
Repeat it.
when
Transgenderism
he
is an
says he wants to
ideology.
be.
It is not a person.
Okay, and
There
what
you
does
go.
the
Okay,
ideology
so when
say?
This is what
Vosh
a
was talking about
Stochastic
transgenderism,
breaks
he
down.
wasn't talking about people. He was talking about an ideology.
What
We
is
know
the
this
ideology?
because of even after he said what he said, he clarified it multiple times, and yet you still persist in insisting that he was talking about
So
eradicating
tell me what
individuals.
he
So
meant,
falsers,
because
stop
I
lying.
must have missed where he like explained what the ideology of transgenderism is.
Oh, Jesus.
I
Are we
watched
gonna
the
do
clip.
this?
I
What
didn't
is
see him.
communism? How do you
You
define
just said
stochastic
what is a
terrorism?
woman.
With
Oh,
I can
goodness.
literally
Now it's
do
like,
that with you.
when you
Communism
ask what he means, it doesn't
is
matter.
communism is the
Okay.
appropriation of all the
I can be real with
the
you.
means of productions for the proletariat away from the
YouTube,
bourgeoisie.
Twitch, I'm going to be real with you right
there's-
now. This is pain, and I'm going to stop it unless you give me more
Facts.
money. So if you don't give me more money, I'm just going to go do other shit. So give me
Alright,
more
Sondsol.
money, right? Or I'm just going to stop.
I just forgot how fucking baby-brained conservatives are sometimes. Holy
Well, he's
shit!
not-
This
he's
is
not-
like talking to a
he's like-
child.
Well, the way it works is if I don't like a word, it doesn't exist. And
There
if
you
a
go.
Or it
word
means
does
something
exist,
different.
I get to pick the meaning of it. And if I don't
Look
get
at
to
this
pick the meaning of it, I'm
extrapolation
going
now.
to add words
let's
to
be
a
fair.
statement.
Lefties
This is
also
how
kind of do
children
that.
do
react.
that.
Yeah,
Like
so
it's
This is
just
how
on and
children
on and
react.
on and on and on.
And falsers is a
You
child,
can't
as we see.
operate in reality.
Okay.
Wait, the reality is that
Oh
there
my
is no
God.
transgenocide.
The reality is,
there is no
by the way, I
stochastic
never took a
terrorism.
position on
The
whether or not what
reality
he said
is that
was one
men
thing or another.
cannot be
The
women.
reality is
Okay,
you tried to
F-bombs
come
have
in
been
here and
trying
paint
to
it as
like move the
exclusive of one thing,
conversation
and you got
off.
called
I'm
out
trying.
for it. And now you're
Yeah.
playing
Okay, we got
games
someone.
about
We
what
got
it
someone
is.
that might move the conversation. We got someone that
I-
might move the conversation. We got someone that. Oh my God! Please, oh my God!
Wait,
Please.
F-bombs had a question for me.
Is it on this conversation?
for a fucking half hour?
F-bombs.
But you will
ask the question.
moderate. Jesus fucking Christ!
It's open. It's open.
Sondsol.
The whole point of the open is less moderation.
Jesus Christ,
Go ask
Sondsol.
He did
Sondsol
say
the
this
question.
wasn't open.
I will build the bridge
Wait,
with
I got
you.
your back.
I completely
Thank
agree.
God we can establish
You're-
the existence of words with devices called dictionaries.
Okay,
and we can
F-bomb.
check
No,
and see if
stop.
they're in there.
Falter, stop,
rather
stop,
than-
stop, stop, stop.
trying.
F-bombs.
Yeah.
Sondsol, go.
Okay. I will build a bridge with you that I agree there is rhetoric that Vosh is using that when decoded by somebody that wants to decode it in a way that justifies what they already want to do, they can give Vosh some credit for giving them like the freedom to pull off this violence. I think I can agree that that's possible with anything, but with his rhetoric, the likelihood he's increasing it. Is that a fair way to put this?
I think that that's the way that we would talk about right-wing terrorism as well. Yeah.
Well, okay. So we can start from a foundation where words can lead to actions, especially if those words are constantly giving fear and the promotion of violence, then you're more likely. Now, the first big difference between the left and the right comes to the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment for the left is about protecting the home or hunting. The Second Amendment for the right is an insurrectionist view of the Second Amendment. It is based in fear, not of home invasion, but of a tyrannical government. So the Second Amendment of protection is actually protection against political violence or political tyranny. And this begins to separate the rhetoric of the government is coming after you. If the left is regularly, you collect gun to protect yourself, you don't plan on overthrowing a tyrannical government.
No,
But
I
the-
fundamentally disagree, because the entire point of especially, I mean, if we're talking specifically about Vosh, like one of the reasons that he wants there to be guns in America, especially in the way that he talks about it, where he used to, I don't know if he still holds his position, but
I'm agree. Vosh fits into this insurrectionist category. So,
okay, I
but
wouldn't
that-
put it
that-
into a left-right dichotomy then, but I
Wait,
agree that there
that-
are two sides of that. Yeah.
That is not like politicians that on the left are for the Second Amendment. don't justify it in overthrowing the government, but they do on the right. The right-wing politicians are saying we need guns to overthrow the government when it gets too out of control.
But the
I
problem
would have to
is,
think about that.
the problem is that Vaush is a pussy ass bitch who's not going to do anything.
Like most progressives and leftists, yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
also
so-
most
Oh my
conservatives. I
God.
mean, when was the last time we saw a like massive armed uprising against like state overreach from the conservatives? Even though they talk about state overreach every single fucking
when
election
they-
cycle.
In the 1800s, and they got their ass handed to them.
Fucking based.
When they
Yeah.
were armed in the Michigan Capitol.
Okay, but the
What?
the trans genocide isn't real. The conservatives are not going to like overthrow the government.
You're just going
January
back to the
6th
same points. Like this is
Go ahead and stack
January
few more
6th
points
was a
rather than
hoax.
stopping on one and building a position. We're here.
January 6th was a hoax.
fucking moron.
Hey, get it,
Go
wait,
on.
what? No,
Go
I have to
on.
know.
You-
January
you
6th is a
guys
hoax.
hold
What does that
this
mean?
20 seconds.
Okay, I
It's
was kidding
good.
about the last one only.
Okay.
Oh, only because we started mocking it.
Yeah, but what? I just
No,
don't
I think
understand
they
what that
way out.
around
means.
a little bit.
He really meant to
Here's
say
the
it was
thing, though.
mostly peaceful, just like the summer
Vaush-
Ah,
BLM
see,
riots.
there you go. Yeah. Taking
Vaush
personal
was one.
responsibility. Like the right likes to do, take personal responsibility by pointing out BLM in response to January 6th. Way
Here's
to
the
take
thing,
personal,
Vaush-
always taking personal responsibility. But Antifa, but the left, but the Democrats.
Wasn't
You're a
but
fucking
anything.
pussy.
It was
Vaush
mostly
is
peaceful.
okay.
That's it.
Vosh
Okay.
is okay with like Vosh is perfectly fine with violence towards right wingers, and so is
Yeah.
Xander Hall. And I don't know about Destiny, but the thing is that like they think that bad things happening to bad people is good.
The trans are bad people.
When you say they,
Jews
why
are
haven't you
bad
given any
people.
examples from the right?
Immigrants are bad people. Is that
Why
who's
did you
the they?
exclusively give examples from the left?
I think because we're only talking, we're in the context of the conversation we're having. That's the people we would talk about, and I would agree. Like, I mean, Vosh over the course of his career has like explicitly said like multiple times. I mean, there's like 20 or 30 videos on YouTube right now. If you Google or if you YouTube, Vosh advocates for violence,
Great.
explicit
So-
calls to violence against police, against like conservative voters.
You told me that
against-
terrorism was
Okay,
good.
extreme dad, I
So-
get it, but we're gonna let some
so-
other people in here.
When it comes to rhetoric,
Whatever.
the importance
Fine.
of rhetoric is based on influence and reach, right? So you look at the left and you look at the right, and you're comparing Vosh, right? You look at influence and reach. Power, media, funding, church, basically is where all of our influence and reach comes from. Power. Who has the judges? Who are the cops? And who's in political office? Are there far left-wing people in office? No. Are there far right-wing people in office? Abso-fucking-lutely. The media. You've got Murdoch, the IDW. You got Heritage.
Can we talk about that first? Can we talk about that first thing, like
Yeah,
left wing
power.
versus right? Okay, so when we look at the amount of like left wingers and right wingers who are extreme, at least in the Overton window in the United States,
Yeah.
do you not think that the squad would be considered like the far left extreme in our political system compared to the
No, because
like the Marjorie Taylor
not
Greene?
one. They are not talking about a genocide. They are not talking about arming up. They are not the left that Wick or any of you talked about in this whole panel. The left that you guys talked about in this whole panel has zero say in the way the country runs.
This is
at
true.
all.
I agree with that.
Yeah, like
completely.
there's no self-proclaimed socialist other than like maybe Bernie Sanders, but he's not
No,
even
that-
really a
he-
socialist.
No.
But there's a reason they don't have institutional power, to be clear. But they do have cultural power. I will say this: they
Oh
don't have
my
institutional
God,
power, but they do have
more
cultural
important.
power. Which
Who are
matters.
they?
That's
Who's-
the fucking thing. They have
Right, but
cultural
if we're
power.
talking about
Green,
state
who's-
violence, if we're talking about state violence, that's like a completely separate conversation to what we were talking about when it comes to the power
No,
of
you're
rhetoric
still
online,
talking.
right?
No, what you're talking about is rhetoric. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to show you if you're talking about comparing Vosh's rhetoric that can lead to violence to the other rhetoric, you can't even begin to like compete.
Well,
Is anyone
what I would
disagreeing
say
with
is, like,
this?
I don't think that there's anything that like even approaches as direct a call to violence in our mainstream political like.
Are
outside
you
of, like,
willing to
maybe-
go fight like hell? Go take your country back? Something about
Bernie Sanders says that we should go fight like hell for our to go to the polls and like vote for.
You're comparing. You're saying what 𝕐𝖎 says.
This
and
is
what,
one of the things. This is the thing that like makes the conversation really, really difficult, because a lot of political speech is going to be around like we need to fight for our rights. We need to fight for this, and that's why a lot of conservatives will say people like Maxine Waters was
Charlie
a
Kirk
stochastic
just said
terrorist
they're
for the
coming
BLM riots.
for you. They are coming to kill you.
Wait, are we talking about media figures, or are we talking about motherfucking people in office?
It's all of it. All of it. They're not separate. You don't be like this influence or that influence. We're talking about influence.
I want to give a chance to someone who hasn't spoken yet. Killian, is that how you say your name?
Yeah.
Like
Killian.
the beer.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. You have the floor. You have thoughts?
So,
Voice them.
falsers, I have a question for you.
Yeah, man.
We're talking about gun control, right? So, do you believe that mass shootings are the biggest cause of death in the United States?
No, obviously not.
It is the largest death.
All right, so
for
why
kids,
are we
though.
only talking about? Well, but why are we only talking? That's not true.
Oh, well,
why are we only talking about? It's not true. That's patently not true.
It's just false.
More teenagers die to inner city gun violence than to mass shootings.
That's still
Without
gun
a doubt.
violence, dude.
Oh,
It says
don't point
guns,
out
right?
these truths. Come on.
Still fucking guns.
I mean, what's that?
They're still guns.
Yeah.
Gun control's gun
Yeah,
control.
they're fucking guns. I agree, but gun control. Okay, you're not going to ban guns in the United States. That's just not going to happen. Because if
was
you
there another
try,
question or, like, a
it'll
position
just be a civil war.
Yeah, no worries. Hey,
Say
was
that
there
again?
another question to follow up or like a position? Because I answered the question. It really didn't go in.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
You asked me if I thought mass shootings were the number one leading cause of death in the United States.
And
My answer
obviously
was
not.
Right.
My answer is no. So
No, they're not. Right. Right. So, do you think that you can ban guns in the United?
do I think you can ban guns outright in the United
Is that-
States? Not right now, no.
Yeah. Is that practical? Okay.
Not at the moment.
Okay. So, okay. AR-15s. AR-15s.
What is
are you
it
laughing about,
for?
Stax?
What is
Staxims,
it
you have something
for?
to say?
What? We all agree that like guns are the most preventable form of death, that I would say, and I think that it's really hard for someone to go to a school. I've had 2 brothers in a mass shooting. That's insane. That's an insane thing that like I just said that no other human being on the planet Earth can agree can even understand. My high school was shot up and a teacher that I know was on the news. That is a fucking unreal situation that almost all
I agree with you.
Americans can
Look,
can
wait. What you're saying is so important.
I agree with you, but I don't think.
What he's saying so important, so let him say it. What he's Staxium is saying so important, let him say it, dude.
He didn't get hit.
Wick handling
He's still
business.
a victim.
Please quit yelling.
And that's what we
Please-
need to
please
realize
chill.
is
Please
he
chill.
didn't die and didn't get
You
hit,
yelled
but he's
so
still a
much in the
victim.
past 10 minutes, and while I agree with you, it's a little grating.
Staxiums, I want you to
Yeah.
finish your point since it's so important.
Oh,
Please.
I was just saying like this is the easiest thing to point to and go
Yes.
that's preventable. We're the only country that has this issue. If we want to talk about car deaths, I am so willing to talk about maybe gravitating towards public transit and outside of cars. I love talking about that shit. That's my bread and butter. And cars are more of a killer than guns. Guns is just an easy thing to point to that we can all say, hey, yeah, cancer probably kills more people. We've got people on cancer.
Well, there's
It
more
seems
than
like we
that.
can
I wanna
agree that
build on
guns
that.
are a problem.
Can I build on that stack? So there's more than that. So Killian, there's kind of an implication in your question that I'm reading of like, well, then why are you so focused on this issue? And it would be a great question for me in particular, who advocated for focus on this panel. So I want to address it directly and clearly. The reason is, when you ask, are mass shootings the number one cause of death? No. But amongst teens and children's, firearms are the leading cause of death right now. And you need to
Yes, I
understand that
agree.
it's not just the death metrics that have the impact here, and Stacks touched on it. It ripples out beyond that. It has an impact when we have teachers in front of kids that are in middle school and elementary school explaining to them that the bucket is there for them to shit in case they have to go on lockdown. It has an impact in the fact that we're doing drills with our children who are not emotionally prepared or mature enough to understand how impactful these things are. And we're doing drills to tell them what to do in case someone rolls in there with that AR-15 you asked me about.
I have 3
tries to
kids
take their
in
life.
school.
So there is a much bigger impact than just that. And that is why my focus is where it is.
I have 3 kids in school, so I understand the anxiety that is involved with sending your kid. I do believe that
You're cutting out, dude.
banning
Like you're
AR-15s
roboting. My friend, you're roboting. We're cutting out. We're only hearing every other word. I don't know if
No,
it's your
I
mic
recall.
settings.
Well, he's fixing that. I recall being in elementary school doing tornado drills, right? And I didn't develop any sense that I was at risk of
Tornadoes aren't
of
people that
immediate
require you to
tornadoes.
shit into a bucket and
I
teach
remember doing
teachers how to
actually. I'm
triage
old
which
enough
child's
to have
life
done
is savable, which
nuclear
to let die.
Yeah.
drills in elementary school, and I didn't suddenly develop a sense that I was at
The
immediate
fact
risk
that you're
of or
comparing
imminent
school
risk of
shooters to
nuclear
tornadoes
war
almost
or
makes it
death.
not even worth
No,
paying
no, no,
attention
no,
And
no, no,
so
no. Stop. What he's
Okay,
talking
can you hear me
about
now?
is the nuclear drills. It's the nuclear
and
drills that they used to do
Tornado.
before the Cold War
Oh, yeah.
ended, where we duck and
we
cover
didn't
and all that.
develop any sense of imminent risk or death from these things. And again, look, we've had since 2006, we've had what 500 incidents that have killed about 2,800 people, and yet over that same time period since 2006, we've had an infinitely higher number of violent acts, of deaths caused by firearms in a variety of different instances, including suicides. And so this hyper focus on mass shootings is simply another vehicle to cause anxiety, to somehow smear people that you don't
You
agree with. That's
absolute
it.
imbecile. We can't control tornadoes. We can control
Facts.
firearms, okay?
This
The
isn't
fact that
about what we can
tornadoes
control
are
or
out
not.
here
Again,
making
okay, so
teachers have to
falsers,
learn how to
again, you have a
triage
hard time
7-year-olds
listening.
and
Can you
decide
hear me
which
okay?
one lives or dies.
And when
That's not the
and
case.
so falsers, when
I
I
mean,
say
it's just pure
because
Can
what
you hear
you're
me okay, Wick?
saying is
gaslighting
that by
nonsense
doing
that's so
school
detached
shooting
from
drills in
reality.
school,
You want to come in here and
you're
compare
harming
tornadoes
children.
Okay.
That's
to
what
mass
you're
shootings.
saying.
Enough.
Okay.
And yet
Enough.
you
Okay.
deliberately
Enough.
Okay.
Enough.
misunderstand
I don't know
that.
why we're
Enough.
talking about fucking tornadoes.
Enough.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it's
Killian.
Listen, I have
No,
listen.
here's the point.
Hang on,
Killian,
let me finish.
real
Let me finish.
quick. So
Hang on.
falsers,
Okay.
you deliberately and intentionally misunderstood my point to be an asshole. And that's because
that's correct.
I was
deliberately
addressing
and
your
intentionally
point
called you an
that
imbecile, so
doing
I would agree with that
gun
assessment.
safety drills in school all of a sudden develops this sudden angst and anxiety and sense of imminent danger is just
Correct,
simply
and there's
false.
backing
And we
evidence
know
from
this. And I
modern
cited 2
psychology to
examples
show it.
of why this is not the case. But you chose not to act with or interact with that
Okay.
perspective.
I
Because
don't.
it's not
You
worth
chose to be
interacting with
stupid.
when you compare it
Okay,
to
you guys
tornadoes.
can measure your dicks
No one's
later. I
comparing
want to get
tornadoes to gun
back to the
violence, you
topic.
moron.
You literally did.
I want to.
No,
You guys.
literally did not, you moron.
Okay. Enough. Enough.
Okay,
Enough.
let me talk.
Killian, go on,
I've
and then we're
got-
probably
I
going to
have-
end this soon. F-bombs, thanks for the bits, but then we're probably going to end this soon because this is cancer, and I hate it. Killian, go.
All right. I have 3 kids in school. All right. I have 2 elementary and I have 1 that's in high school. I understand the anxiety involved with sending the kids to school every day, right? Well, I don't have a lot of worries around here. I live in a pretty rural area. My issue is I don't think banning AR-15s is going to fix the issue.
School
I still
shootings
think you're
never
gonna have
happen
school
in
shootings.
rural areas.
I still think you're going to have rarely. I still think you're going to have. They don't. They're
Capita.
rare.
What?
Uh,
I swear to fucking God.
Can I finish?
No, it's because rural schools are rarer than urban schools. I swear, it's fucking.
Can I finish?
Go ahead.
I don't think that banning guns is going to fix the issue. I think we have a mental health crisis with our teenagers in this country.
Absolutely.
They're raising themselves on the internet. Their parents are putting iPads in their hands at 3 and 4 years old and saying, take off. They no longer have, they no longer socialize like we did when we were growing up. There's no socialization going on. If I let my 16-year-old, he would sit in his room. He would come home from school, go to his room and stay in that room on a computer until he went to bed.
Watching
all
WhickTV,
weekend long.
which he should do.
Yeah,
but
watching
come on,
WhickTV. Yeah, watching WhickTV. Our kids aren't social like they used to. They don't go to dances like they used to. They don't have sleepovers like they used to. they don't get together and do anything, right? They sit in a room or they sit on a computer all fucking day. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have to tackle. I think if you pay an AR-15s,
like
if you pay an AR-15s, hang on, let me finish. If you pay an AR-15s, I'm telling you, that's just what I believe.
It's crazy. Since the 80s, parents have been like increasingly like hyper protective over their kids, right? To the point where like them walking around in neighborhoods was like seen as socially unacceptable because of like the kids snatching, fears that happened like throughout the 80s and 90s, throughout like the 2000s. Like people got really scared to let their kids go outside. Then video games were also invented around that time, and like, what is the natural conclusion? That kids are going to stay inside. They're going to play fucking video games. With the advent of the internet, they're going to, communicate with more people around the world. So yeah, like when I was a kid, what did we do? We fucking brought our fucking Xboxes over to each other's houses.
That's right.
We fucking did a LAN party and we fucking had fun. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing as long as your kid's still getting exercise.
I think that's.
Can I also answer it? Can I answer it, Killian, real quick? Do you think banning guns is difficult? But you'd rather ban all Xboxes, iPhones, PlayStations. You think that's easier?
Facts.
I think parents can do a better job of making sure their kids aren't staying on them all fucking day. Yes.
You think it's easier for your message to spread across all adults in America who have kids than to have some gun control brought in?
Yeah, I think it's easier to do that than ban guns. Yes, I do.
Well, hold on, Killian. I want to engage with a couple specific things here. One, no one's talking about a total ban on guns. No one has taken that position.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about gun control.
Regulation.
Right?
Falsers is talking about confiscation.
Confiscation. Hold on, Life. Let me get it
confiscation.
Let me get it out. I'm not engaging with you. I'm engaging with Killian. So what you said earlier is that getting rid of AR-15s will not prevent school shootings, and I agree. But prevention is not the goal. Mitigation is the goal. We are trying to reduce the frequency of these instances, and we are taking steps that are in line with that. And so when people say, well, it doesn't work, unfortunately, while I understand people have that perception, and I often understand why they have that perception, none of the evidence we have on hand backs that. There are clear correlations between stricter gun laws state to state. That's correct, state to state, alongside with lower rates of gun deaths per capita. It just is.
That don't have major inner cities dominated by Democrats.
I am hungry. I am tired. I am done with this conversation. I love you all. And I want to have this gun control conversation and debate. Even you, Staxium. We need to have an actual gun control panel with an actual gun control debate, and we will absolutely do that next week. I don't know when, but we will pick a day and we'll get this shit done.
When's the mental health debate? When's that? Because
that's every day because I debate. That's every day that I decide. This is every day when I decide whether or not I want to stream. It's a mental health battle on my end. Do I want to become more mentally ill or less mentally ill? And dealing with all the mentally ill people that I have to deal with to stream on the daily is taking a toll, gang. It's taking a toll. So you in the chat, you need to come by and you need to come by to my Discord and chat with me there. What you need to do, you need to donate to my channel. What you need to do is you need to follow my channel. You need to subscribe to my channel. You need to give me bits like F-bombs. Gave me bits. He said to my channel, F-bombs is a hero. Can you be a hero? What you need to do is on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, you need to come back. You need to come back to this channel where we stream.
Twitch Primes.
Well, YOLO bowling stuff, you're great.
Mute him. What the fuck
What you need to do is you're going to come to my channel where we debate about whether Biden should be withholding federal funds to states that don't pass bills he doesn't like the anti-trans legislation. Should that be a thing?
The answer is yes.
And we're going to find out when we go in, and we're going to have some great people on. We're going to have Pondering Politics on. We're going to have Lactoid on. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun. But for now, what we're going to do, we're going to raid out. Okay? Are any of you going to stream after this?
No, I'm going to call it.
Okay, no, everyone's calling it.
Streaming now.
That's what I'm asking him. Right? Are you going to end it, or are you going to keep streaming?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm streaming, yeah.
Okay, then we were right into Sondsol. Okay.
Oh, based. Thank you so much.
Okay, gang. That's what we're going to do.
Thanks.
Much love to everyone.
Appreciate it. Yeah, much love.
Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you again for all the support. Peace. Thank you for all the people who supported me. And I guess when we get to Sondsol chat, I want you to spam the emotes. I want you to call it a hate raid. Okay? And I want you to tell him that Wick sent you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey,
Bye, Staxiums.
see ya.
Okay, gosh.
Hey, Wick, thanks for having me on. You have a great night.
Thanks for trying. I'll see you later.